Chapter 331. In fact, when Zheng Tan came in, he smelled the smell that made him very uncomfortable. It was slightly stronger than the smell in Boss Kai's lounge, and the source of the smell was the nervous cleaner. Looking at the cleaner's fingernails, Zheng Tan didn't know whether this auntie knew she was in a very dangerous situation. In addition to the cleaning tools, the store distributed cleaning clothes and shoes. The cleaner at work would put her clothes in the wardrobe. Zheng Tan could smell the stronger smell from the wardrobe. Of course, it was only relative. People might not be able to recognize it with their sense of smell. Zheng Tan couldn't tell Boss Kai in detail. Moreover, Boss Kai had realized that there might be something wrong with the bottle of cleaner, so he took action quickly. In the afternoon, the food flavor store was closed, and the door was closed. When people outside walked past, they could hear some knocking and the sound of an electric drill. Looking at the renovation sign hanging outside, they didn't think much about it. Many stores would renovate on weekdays, so that they could make a better profit on weekends. In the food flavor store, there was indeed work going on. Boss Kai had noticed some places that needed minor repairs, and the layout also needed to be adjusted slightly. After all, people had different habits in different places. This was a good opportunity to tidy it up. His lounge was the main place for the renovation, and it needed to be completely cleaned and redecorated. Zheng Tan didn't go back in the afternoon. He stayed there and watched Boss Kai look for help. Boss Kai's hands were shaking when he received the test results. The several highly toxic heavy metals made him panic. The test results showed that some of them were insecticides. Nowadays, many people didn't use those heavy metals to grow vegetables or kill insects. Many countries had even reduced or stopped using them, but some places still used them. As for how the insecticide got into the cleaner's bottle, even the cleaner herself didn't know. If they really wanted to harm you, they wouldn't spray this kind of cleaner. That way, the toxicity would be reduced a lot, and the effect would be slower if they sprayed it here. To achieve their goal, it's better to spray the insecticide directly. The friend who helped Boss Kai with the test said to Boss Kai. According to the cleaner, she felt that Boss Kai was a good person. She felt bad for taking advantage of Boss Kai in private. When she was cleaning, she even wiped Boss Kai's keyboard and computer hard. This was also the reason why Zheng Tan avoided Boss Kai's hand, because Boss Kai's hand had the same smell. Thinking about it, if the bottle of detergent was replaced with the kind of insecticide that didn't have any smell, the computer, keyboard, desk, sofa, window, and other places that Boss Kai came into contact with every day would be covered with poison. Anyone who lived in such a room for a long time couldn't help but tremble. Don't worry, it might be an accident. Anyway, you'd better investigate this matter carefully. Of course, if it's really an accident, I can only say that you're a little unlucky this year. Lao Kai, this is your zodiac year, right? That person just said it casually, but he didn't expect Boss Kai to seriously nod his head. The other person opened his mouth, but in the end, he could only remain silent. Although he usually joked with others that his zodiac year was a little unlucky, he didn't think so in his heart. He didn't believe in those things, because his zodiac year didn't have any big ups and downs. However, it was hard to say for Boss Kai. He even encountered such a thing. Fortunately, he found out in time and didn't make a big deal out of it. Before the lounge was cleaned and renovated, Boss Kai temporarily separated a room on the second floor of food flavor. When the lounge was renovated and ventilated for a period of time, he would tear down this compartment. As for the investigation, Boss Kai didn't have many connections in Chuhua City, and he didn't have any foundation. If he really wanted to investigate something in depth, it was naturally best to find a local. Therefore, Boss Kai went to find Yi Hao. At that time, Chairman Shu specially asked for it, so naturally Yi Hao had to give some face. Besides, this was just a small matter, and it didn't cost much. The result that Zheng Tan found out a week later was the same as what Boss Kai's friend said. This matter was indeed just an accident. The cleaner's hometown was in the suburbs. Someone in the cleaner's family worked in a factory that manufactured detergent. During the new year, they were given large bottles of detergent. In order to save money, they would specially use a spray bottle to dilute the detergent before using it. Someone had rented a piece of land next to her house to plant flowers. The pesticide was also from that person's family. However, a lot of it was lost in the snowstorm this year, so that person didn't plan to plant flowers anymore. After moving some things away, he closed the door. During the new year, the cleaner's house was also lively. There were many places that the adults couldn't take care of. A child went to the flower bed and found a few bottles. Coincidentally, there was a small plastic factory that produced this kind of spray bottle. The spray bottles used by everyone were similar, but those children didn't know. Seeing that the color was not bad, they thought that it was the same as their own detergent, so they took it back and sprayed it everywhere. As it didn't have a strong smell, no one paid attention to it. Later, when the child didn't play with it, he directly put it on the table. After that, someone mistakenly thought that it was their own detergent and wanted to empty a few bottles to store other things. All of them were gathered into a large bottle and poured out from the large bottle whenever they wanted to use it. At that time, the adults were too busy, so this work was done by the children. The children didn't notice the difference in viscosity between the bottle of pesticide and their own detergent. After pouring it directly into the undiluted large bottle, they ran to play. Because of this, from then on, all the detergents used in the cleaner's house were mixed with insecticides. Although the toxicity of the insecticides was reduced a lot, the house, especially the room where the cleaner lived, had been sprayed everywhere by the kid who took the insecticides from the flower bed. Therefore, the toxicity of the insecticides was much higher. This was a slow process of poisoning. Their daily breathing, skin contact, and so on would all poison them. However, during this process, the cleaner didn't notice it. Perhaps there were some symptoms of poisoning, but they didn't care. Sometime after the new year, the cleaner came to the city and also brought 2 bottles of detergent. He cleaned at food flavor for a period of time. Because his family members were sick and he was short of money, he set his eyes on the detergent that was given out by the shop. Each bottle was worth dozens of yuan. A few days after changing the detergent, Zheng Tan came across it. Pesticides and rodenticides were things that the Jiaopa once talked about when he taught Zheng Tan a lesson. That day, when Feng Baijin mentioned the dead rat, it also reminded Zheng Tan of the memory from a few years ago. That was why he was able to quickly recognize the threat when he jumped out of the window. He just wasn't sure what it was. After all, there were many kinds of pesticides and rodenticides. Even if some of them looked the same and people smelled the same, a cat's sense of smell could still distinguish the differences. After learning the truth, Yihao talked to Boss Kai and sighed. That guy always gets into trouble. He's a troublemaker. The guy and troublemaker that Yihao mentioned were obviously referring to Zheng Tan. If Zheng Tan had been there, Yihao might not have said these things. However, at that time, Zheng Tan wasn't there. Boss Kai didn't think that it was Zheng Tan's fault. This incident was an accident. Since it happened to him, he could only blame it on his bad luck. Even if the poison used in his lounge wasn't very toxic, what if it had been used for a long time? Who could guarantee that he would be safe? Besides, he was running a food store. This kind of store was most afraid of being involved with poison. Even the slightest incident could affect the whole business. It's not causing trouble. It's blocking disasters, Boss Kai said. Yihao recalled what had happened in the past. Indeed, he did feel that way. Speaking of which, ever since the taste of food was introduced, that cat hadn't come to victorious return for a long time. If he ran into it again, he would have it walk around and see if it could block any potential disasters. Zheng Tan was completely unaware of Yihao's thoughts. After the incident at Boss Kai's, the number of times he went there had decreased. In the past, he would go there for a meal every 2 days. Now he would go there once a week. It wasn't that Zheng Tan was afraid that the poison in Boss Kai's lounge hadn't dissipated. He had learned from Boss Kai's friend who was in charge of testing that the poison in the lounge wasn't very toxic. It was just that the smell at the time reminded him of something bad, and he felt threatened. But now, Zheng Tan didn't go there as often because Boss Kai's lounge was too small. There were too many things piled up, and it wasn't very convenient to eat there. Every time Boss Kai saw Zheng Tan, he would be very enthusiastic. Whenever Zheng Tan went there, he would have someone prepare a meal for him. Boss Kai felt a lot more at ease with this cat around. When the cleaner was fired, Boss Kai saw that there were several people in the cleaner's house who were chronically poisoned, and the medical expenses were high, so he didn't deduct any of their wages or pursue compensation. The cleaner also knew what to say and what not to say. After leaving, he didn't mention the taste of food to anyone. If it were Yi Hao, he definitely wouldn't have let it go so easily, even if it was just an accident. This day, Zheng Tan followed Jiao Pa to the cafeteria for 2 days, and stayed at Jiao Wei's restaurant for 3 days. He wanted to change his taste, so he came to the taste of food again. After eating, he didn't stay for long. He planned to go home and secretly go online to see the netizens scolding a certain celebrity with the surname Zhao, who was arrested before the new year. Now no one continued to call him young master. Instead, they called him hypocrite. During the new year, because of the snow disaster, no one paid attention to this matter. After the incident, a few people who had a grudge against a certain young master started to make waves to make their presence known again. When Zheng Tan was bored, he also went to watch the scolding battle. Unexpectedly, after taking 2 steps, Zheng Tan was stopped by someone again. This time it wasn't Feng Baijin, but Mao, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. Mao officially became a father on New Year's Day. As he wished, he had a daughter. Because she was born on New Year's Day, her nickname was Yuan Yuan. There were even people who teased the father and daughter. One was Mao, while the other was Yuan. If the word money was added, then the price would be 10 times higher. This time, Mao came here to deliver an invitation. It was his daughter's 100th day banquet, so the few families here had to make the trip themselves. Celestine and Jiao Pa also sent an invitation. He had just delivered an invitation from Triumph, and bought some food. He knew that the dishes at the Taste of Food were good, but he rarely came here. It was rare for him to come here, so he bought some food. Later, he still had to go to the old lady's place in the lakeside villa, so he bought some food and brought it over to share with the old lady. That great aunt was old, but her appetite was quite good. Black Coal, let's go. Let's go see great aunt together. Mao got into the car and waved at Zheng Tan. Chapter 332. Mao had changed his car. It was no longer the ordinary car he used to drive. In the past, Mao drove for his own convenience. Now he had to drive his wife and children from time to time, so he had a higher requirement for safety. After all, he had the money to buy a better car. Zheng Tan saw a lot of children's products in the car. There was also the smell of milk. Mao was in a good mood. He kept talking about his daughter, Yuan, on the way. However, no matter how Mao praised his daughter, Zheng Tan did not say anything as he had not seen her with his own eyes. When they arrived at the lakeside villa area, Zheng Tan did not stay in the car to follow Mao to the old lady's house. Instead, he went to Feng Baijin's house. When Zheng Tan got close to the house, he heard Feng Baijin roaring. "If you bite my cable again, I will throw your tiger toy away. Do you understand? I will throw it away completely." Feng Baijin only had classes in the morning, but he skipped all of them. According to the current arrangement, Feng Baijin had to skip the first 2 classes in the morning. If he chose to skip the last 2 classes, it would depend on how long he slept. According to the rules of Tsinghua University, there were morning exercises for freshmen and sophomores. Feng Baijin basically did not go. He had to do morning exercises from elementary school to high school. Why would he still do morning exercises in university? F***ck. If you want to deduct marks, just do it. Feng Baijin had been sleeping in the morning. He played games until late last night, so he could not get up today. When he woke up, he found that the cable on the computer table was bitten again. He originally wanted to download a few songs to his MP3 player, but now it seemed that he had to buy a new cable. As for the tiger toy that Feng Baijin mentioned, Zheng Tan knew about it. Back then, when he fished the tiny Huzi out of the alley, he was the one who placed the furry tiger toy next to Huzi. Later on, Huzi directly treated it as his own toy. Even when he moved out of his nest, he would bring the toy over. Sometimes he would hug the toy to sleep, just like when he was young. Even after he grew up, this habit did not change. Every once in a while, Aunt Lee, who worked as a nanny, would take out the toy to wash it and then dry it on the balcony. Every time this happened, Huzi would squat on the balcony and guard it. Every once in a while, he would look at the drying rack on the balcony for fear that it would be thrown away. The door of the house was open. Zheng Tan did not climb through the window and walked in directly. Aunt Lee was mopping the floor. When she saw Zheng Tan, She did not say anything and continued to mop the floor. Zheng Tan was already a regular here, so it was not strange. When Zheng Tan went to Feng Baijin's room on the second floor, he saw Wuxia lying in its own nest, its two front paws tightly holding the tiger toy, not letting Feng Baijin take the toy away. After Feng Baijin pulled the tiger toy's head, he snorted and let go. Wuxia hurriedly moved the toy back into the nest. I'll let it go this time. Next time, even if I don't throw your toy away, I'll tear it into pieces. Let's see what you're hugging while you sleep. Do you know about dismemberment? Zheng Tan had heard similar words many times. Every time, it would start with if you, I'll, and after a while, it would end with I'll let it go this time. Next time. There were indeed a few scars on Wuxia's body, but looking at his appearance, he seemed to be in good spirits and would recover soon. It was not that he could not go out, but every time he was injured, he would be watched by the 3 people in the room, and would not be allowed to go out. Zheng Tan looked at the computer that Feng Baijin had turned on. On the screen was a game. When Feng Baijin had nothing to do, he would stay at home and make games. Unlike commercial production, Feng Baijin made games based on his preferences. Zheng Tan knew that Feng Baijin made 2 games. One was Cat and Cat. This game was not novel in nature. There were too many cat and cat games. Feng Baijin's game had a lot of downloads. Firstly, the cartoon cat heads in the game were very cute. When they were removed, they had different animation effects and different cat sounds. One of the original cat heads in the game was Wuxia. When the cat head was not removed, it was still very cute. When it was removed, it looked like it had been beaten up. Its sound was also the same as Wuxia's. The second game was called Cat and Mouse. Honestly speaking, it was not novel. In the beginning, catching mice was similar to some small action games. What many people liked was that after catching mice, they would use them to scare people. For example, they would put the mice on the owner's bed, quilt, drawer, bag, and so on. If this kind of thing was placed in a game, everyone would play happily. However, in real life it was definitely a scam. Feng Baijin had a deep understanding of this. Feng Baijin integrated his own personal experience into the game. However, people who played the game would not know the developer's history behind the tears and tears. In fact, Zheng Tan was looking forward to Feng Baijin's future games. These were only his own practice works. Many things were not perfect. It was hard to say what would happen in the future. It seemed that Feng Baijin might develop further in this direction. When he went downstairs and went out, Aunt Li was sitting on the sofa on the first floor drinking tea and watching TV. She was holding a teacup and wearing a red bracelet on her wrist. It was a very simple kind of bracelet made of red string. Aunt Li was probably in her zodiac year. Zheng Tan had not seen her wear it before. After leaving Feng Baijin's place, Zheng Tan went to the old lady's place to take a look. He squatted not far away and waited for Mao. He did not want to go to the old lady's house. Every time he saw the old lady, Zheng Tan always felt strange in his heart. He could not tell what the feeling was, so it was better not to see her. When he came, Mao said that they would go to Celestine's place to eat in the afternoon. He had already called the Jiaopa, so Zheng Tan did not go back. He waited for Mao to come out from the old lady's place and hitched a ride with him. Speaking of which, Celestine's son was already 1 year old. His first birthday celebration was close to Mao's daughter's 100-day celebration. Zheng Tan did not go to Celestine's house many times. Every time he went, he felt that Wei Xiaobei had changed a lot. The last time he came, Zheng Tan remembered that Wei Xiaobei could only crawl on the foam mat with difficulty. Now he could walk 2 steps. Wei Xiaobei was Celestine's son's nickname. When he was born, he was very fat. Although he did not look like a lump of meat now, he was still a bit fatter than other children of the same age. When Zheng Tan and Mao arrived at Celestine's house, Wei Xiaobei was holding onto the wall to walk. When he saw Zheng Tan and Mao, he was not afraid. Instead, he happily walked towards them. However, after taking 2 steps, he fell down. The floor and the walls were pasted with a layer of soft cushions. The furniture in the house and the hard corners were all covered with soft cushions, so there was no need to worry about him bumping into them. Therefore, Fatty Wei wouldn't be injured even if he fell to the ground. After turning over, Wei Xiaobei did not cry. He continued to happily walk over. This time, he did not walk and directly crawled. This way he would be faster. Air Mao wrapped up Wei Xiaobei, who had crawled in front of him. "Little fatty, come and call me second uncle. Call me second uncle." Wei Xiaobei laughed happily. Then, he sneezed in front of Air Mao's face, causing Air Mao's face to be covered in saliva. Air Mao wiped his face and silently cursed that his daughter was still the cutest. Little fatty was too much of a bastard. "Sister-in-law, did Wei Xiaobei catch a cold?" Celestine's wife took the child and looked at him. "He's fine." Then, she put Wei Xiaobei down. Wei Xiaobei, who had regained his freedom, crawled towards the sofa where Air Mao and Zheng Tan were sitting. "I heard that he can call mom and dad now?" Air Mao asked. "Yes, but I'm not too sure." Celestine's wife smiled. In the same neighborhood, there was a child who could call out when he was 10 months old. Although Celestine did not say anything, Celestine felt very unhappy when he saw that family being cocky in front of them. However, this could not be rushed. Different children had different situations. Last week, when he heard Wei Xiaobei speak, Celestine was so happy that he did not sleep until the middle of the night. "Come, call him brother He." Celestine's wife carried Wei Xiaobei and placed him on her lap. She then faced Zheng Tan's direction and said. After knowing that Zhou Xiaobei called Zheng Tan brother He, Celestine's wife also told Wei Xiaobei to call him brother He every time she saw Zheng Tan. However, Wei Xiaobei did not know how to say it before and had never called him that before. Wei Xiaobei looked at Zheng Tan, and after his mother guided him a few times, he called out haha. He did not say it clearly, but he could hear the meaning behind it. On the other hand, Air Mao made Wei Xiaobei call him second uncle again. Wei Xiaobei's response was pfft. This angered Air Mao to the point that he complained about the difference in treatment. Celestine came back early in the afternoon. He did not have to work overtime today. When he came back, he hugged Wei Xiaobei and called him a few times before chatting with Air Mao. Here. Air Mao threw something to Celestine. Celestine took it and looked at it. It was a red braided bracelet. It was very simple and did not have any gold, silver, jade, or anything like that. Isn't it your zodiac year? I took one from my great-aunt and gave it to you. She has a lot of these things. Hearing Air Mao's words, Zheng Tan thought about the bracelet in Aunt Li's hands. The two braided bracelets looked similar, but Celestine's bracelet should be a man's bracelet. The knot on the string was a bit different from Aunt Li's bracelet. Even without any gold ornaments, it looked a bit more rigid. Celestine originally did not take it to heart, but when he thought about what he heard from Yi Hao about the boss of food flavor, he still wore it. Since it was just a small thing, it was not troublesome. It was just for psychological comfort, so wearing it was not bad. In the beginning, the two of them were talking about Wei Xiaopeng's first birthday and Air Mao's 100-day banquet. When they talked about their master, the two of them sighed. The old man was getting older and had accidentally fallen down a while ago. Even if he usually looked healthy, he was still old and was forced to stay in bed for a period of time by his disciples. This time, Celestine and Air Mao did not want the old man to travel a long distance to come over. The old man had attended their wedding. Now the old man could only look at the two of them through the pictures sent by the computer. However, Celestine thought that when they could go over to take a look, the master and his disciples could gather together. Now that the few of them were all fathers, the few of them who attended Air Mao's wedding said that they would find a time to gather with the old man. After being separated for so many years, they did not meet up often. In the future, they would all be busier, and other things could not be said. I also know that. After the new year, I went over to take care of some matters. The old man's mental state was very good. However, I was thinking that when my heir Yuan is a bit older, we should bring him over to take a look. Right now, heir Yuan is still too young. Air Mao said. And when the time comes, I will bring little fatty over as well. Oh, master also said that if we go, we should bring black charcoal over to play with Dashin. Are we really bringing him? Celestine looked at Zheng Tan beside him and thought about Dashin's ferocious appearance. He felt that this was not a good idea. At the end of last year, when he went on a business trip to visit the old man, he saw Dashin biting a rabbit until his face was covered in blood. Zheng Tan was also pondering over the Dashin that Air Mao and Celestine were talking about. He had long heard of Dashin's name, but he had never seen him before. He was too focused on his thoughts and did not notice. When Zheng Tan noticed, Wei Xiaopeng was leaning on the edge of the sofa, holding Zheng Tan's cattail, and putting it into his mouth. Chapter 333. Seeing Wei Xiaopeng grab the cat's tail, Ermao smiled and said, "If it was any other cat, it would have already scratched him. Senior brother Wei, you have to be more careful. My wife's relative's child is like this. He's already 3 years old, and doesn't listen to anything. The parents won't always keep an eye on him." Once the child ran to grab the cat's tail, and was scratched by the cat. You know, children don't know the severity of the situation. The cat's reflexive claw immediately drew blood. If it wasn't for the fact that the child was wearing a lot of clothes, let alone his hand, his arm would have been scratched. Ermao said this while picking up the good news. This kind of thing happened quite often. Scratching the hand or arm was considered lucky, but scratching the face or eye would be troublesome. Celestine nodded. He did have to be careful. He had heard of this before, but the cats he was familiar with were all fine. They had never had this kind of problem, so he had overlooked it. Now that he thought about it, he really had to put more thought into it. He couldn't let his son develop this kind of habit. He had to know what he could and couldn't do. After all, not every cat was a brother black. They wouldn't tolerate it. Thinking of something, Ermao smiled proudly. But my 2 daughters get along quite well. The 2 daughters Ermao was referring to were his cat Black Rice and his daughter Yuan. He even took out his phone to show Celestine a picture of the 2 daughters. It looked quite harmonious. With regards to Wei Xiaopeng's naughty behavior of grabbing the cat's tail, Zheng Tan decided to stay away from him before he turned 8. He wouldn't get close to the first birthday banquet either. After eating dinner at Celestine's house, Ermao first sent Zheng Tan back to the courtyard. On the way, he even said that he would let the cat's tail off during Wei Xiaopeng's first birthday banquet. Thinking about the scene, Ermao couldn't help but laugh. However, he was only joking. Nowadays, many children's first birthday banquets didn't do this. However, since Celestine wanted to do it, Ermao wouldn't go and cause trouble. If he really screwed Wei Xiaopeng over, he was afraid that Celestine would also screw him over during his daughter's first birthday banquet. Zheng Tan listened to Ermao's complaints and looked inside the car. Compared to when they went there were a few fewer gifts in Ermao's car. There was an extra box. The box was not tightly closed. Zheng Tan opened it and saw 2 pieces of woven fabric similar to the red rope he gave to Celestine. Was Ermao going to give these away? Black coal, don't destroy the red string. This thing costs $50 each. I've taken the last few today. I'll give them away when the time comes, Ermao said. 50 yuan. That old hag was really ruthless. Zheng Tan stared hard at the red rope woven fabric. There wasn't even a stone strung on it. Why was it so expensive? Hearing Ermao's words, it seemed that there were quite a lot of people buying it. This old hag really knew how to swindle people. It was no wonder that before Ermao found her, she had been living a good life in a small village without plowing or plowing. $50 wasn't a lot. To many people, it was just a small amount of money. However, when he thought about how the red rope looked like it could be bought at a stall for a few dollars, and then thought about the woven fabric that was tens of times more expensive, Zheng Tan couldn't help but silently curse the old hag for swindling people. However, at the same time, Zheng Tan also wondered if he should buy one as well. Little Pomelo was 12 years old this year. Many people in the same grade were older than her by a year or 2. In addition, children didn't really care about the term natal year. Therefore, other than the Jiaoma buying some red clothes for little Pomelo, Zheng Tan didn't see anything that deliberately targeted the term natal year. After all, among young people, although there were many who paid attention to this term, there weren't many. Back then, the Jiao Yuan didn't pay attention to this aspect. Zheng Tan had only heard about it from Jiaoma. The Jiao Yuan didn't care at all. Things like wearing red underwear, the Jiao Yuan didn't do it. After Zheng Tan got home, he rummaged through the drawer where he kept his money. Most of the money he saved before the new year was wrapped in red packets and given out. After the new year, he worked overtime a few times and got some more. Xiao Guo was also generous now. He didn't give out 50 yuan a few times. Basically, he gave out 100 yuan. After rummaging through the money and making sure that he had enough money, Zheng Tan decided to go to the old lady's house to see if there were really a lot of people there like Mao said. This was the psychology of people. If everyone bought something, they would buy it too. On a good morning, Zheng Tan went to the lakeside villa area and lay down on a tree near the old lady's house. Although the old lady was always in a wheelchair and didn't usually run around, there were quite a lot of people who went to talk to her. Most of them were middle-aged women or elderly people. With Zheng Tan's hearing, he could hear the old lady's voice. Needless to say, the old woman did look like an expert when it came to tricking people. She tricked them into a daze. At least, from Zheng Tan's point of view, the old woman was tricking people. While she was fooling people, the old lady's hands were not idle. She was holding a red rope and weaving something. Even though she was getting on in years and her hands were trembling, her knitting was not slow. Zheng Tan was far away and could not see clearly, but by the time the old woman had finished chatting with someone, she was done. She put the finished product aside and continued knitting. And most of the people who came to chat with her would pay for one or two. Zheng Tan decided to stay in the afternoon and see how many people the old lady could fool. As for lunch at noon, Zheng Tan thought about it and decided not to go back to eat. It was troublesome to run around. If he was nearby, he could go to Feng Baijin's house for a meal. Aunt Li's cooking was not bad. Zheng Tan was planning to go to Feng Baijin's house for a meal when he saw two children about 10 years old running to the old lady's house like thieves. They were afraid of being seen by others. They should be primary school students who came home from school at noon. There was a primary school nearby. Many children in this community and some nearby communities went to school there. It was said that the quality of teaching was good. Naturally, some of the corresponding fees were more expensive. Although it was compulsory education, there were still many other expenses. The two children were holding a bag of bowls in their hands. Those were the bowls they brought to school for breakfast. They would take them back to wash at noon. The little girl was dressed like a child in this villa area, and the little boy was shabbier. He should be from a nearby community. Seeing the behavior of the two children, Zheng Tan was not in a hurry to go down the tree for a meal. He continued to stay here to see what the two children were going to do. Generally, people who went to the old lady either wanted to talk about the 5 elements of feng shui, or wanted to buy a red rope out of admiration. These two children shouldn't be the former. As for the latter, these two children wouldn't be looking for a scam, right? It was 50 yuan for a red rope. At this time, no one was there to chat with the old lady. Everyone had to go back to prepare lunch. The old lady had someone to take care of her, so she didn't have to do it herself. She was still in the yard knitting the red rope. The 3-legged cat was lying at the side, guarding the finished products. Granny Yang, the little girl, stood at the gate of the yard and shouted politely. Zheng Tan heard from Mao that the old lady's surname seemed to be Ouyang, but he didn't know when it became Yang. Mao also said that Ouyang, O and Yang had the same surname. Zheng Tan wasn't interested and didn't listen much. However, thinking back, the jade token had the word Ouyang on it. At that time, Zheng Tan only recognized the word Yang. Oh, little Nini. The old lady looked at the little girl standing at the gate and smiled. Her face was full of wrinkles and her eyes were squinted. Granny Yang, I brought my classmate here to buy a bracelet. No, buy. The little girl didn't know what it was. She pulled the little boy forward and said, You can say it. The little boy was a little embarrassed and nervous. However, as the old lady asked some seemingly random questions, the little boy relaxed and answered them one by one. Zheng Tan listened to their conversation and understood that the little boy wasn't buying it for a person, but for a cat. No one in his family was in the zodiac year this year, but the old cat at home was already 12 years old. It was even older than the little boy. The old lady didn't look very surprised. She was still smiling and kind to children. She listened to the little boy talk about the cat at home. At the same time, her hands didn't stop and she was finishing knitting. Granny Yang, can you buy it? After saying that, the little boy asked with a red face. In many people's eyes, his behavior was a wastrel, doing useless work and foolishly looking for trouble. Could a cat be the same as a human? According to the conversion of the age of a cat and a human, many people said that a 7 or 8-year-old cat was equivalent to a human's 50 years old. For example, the 12-year-old cat at home was equivalent to a human 60 years old or 70 years old. It was a real old cat. Of course. The old lady handed over the knitted item in her hand. The little girl came over to take a look. Hey, it's different from the one I saw last time. To make sure, she looked at the bracelets in the box next to her. This one was indeed different from the others. The old lady just smiled and didn't answer. The little boy carefully put the red knitted item in his hand into his pocket. Then he took out a plastic box of candy from the bag that held the bowl. There was some change in the box. There weren't any 5 or 10 yuan notes, but there were a lot of 1.5 yuan notes. There were also some 10 yuan coins. After counting the money with a red face, the little boy said embarrassedly, "Granny Yang, you don't mind this, right?" "It's okay. Just leave it here," the old lady said casually. When leaving, the little boy turned back to look at the old lady. "Granny Yang, I heard that the natal year is a hurdle. Will it pass this hurdle?" "Do you want it to pass this hurdle?" the old lady asked. "Of course. I heard that there was a cat in the north of the city that lived until it was over 20 years old," the little boy said excitedly. "That's good." The little boy was a little confused, but he soon smiled and waved to the old lady. "We're leaving. Thank you, Granny Yang." The two children left the old lady's yard and whispered as they walked. Zheng Tan was curious and wanted to see what the old cat looked like. "I'll pay you back the 20 yuan as soon as I have the money," the little boy said. This was urgent. The pocket money that he had saved for so long was only 30 yuan. It was not enough for 50 yuan. "Don't worry about it. You don't have much pocket money. Besides, I don't need it." Most of the children living in this villa area came from well-off families. The more generous parents would give more. Many elementary school children who played games were rich. "Next week. I should be able to pay you back the next week," the little boy said with certainty. He thought of an idea. "Let's not talk about this first. How's your cat now?" the little girl asked. "It's good. I heard that when a cat gets old, its teeth will fall out. But when I opened it yesterday, my cat didn't lose a single tooth. It has a good appetite. But when I saw it last week, it looked listless. It didn't even jump when I teased it with a wool rope. It looked so lazy." Chapter 334. When they left the neighborhood, there was only the little boy. The little girl lived there, but now she had returned home. Zheng Tan followed the little boy not far behind. After leaving the lakeside villa area, they walked along the main road and turned a corner. There was a neighborhood that had been built 10 years ago, and the child's family lived there. It was Zheng Tan's first time here. Compared to some of the neighborhoods on the old street, there was not much difference. Perhaps the neighborhoods that had been built back then were all similar. The child's family lived on the second floor. Before entering the building, he could see a yellow and white cat squatting on the second floor windowsill. This should be the 12-year-old cat. Compared to Huang and the sheriff, the cat's eyes revealed a calmer emotion. It was unclear whether it was because of its age or because of its personality. The child looked at the cat on the second floor, smiled, and waved at it before entering the building. In the past, his cat could easily jump down from the second floor. It could not be locked up, but now it could not. It spent most of its time at home. At most, it would lie on the windowsill to bask in the sun and look outside. Zheng Tan did not follow. Seeing that the cat on the second floor had returned to the house after the child entered the building, Zheng Tan decided to jump to the second floor to take a look. After all, he was just a cat now, not a person. No one would think that he was a thief. This kind of old neighborhood was easy to climb. Plus, many residents like to install a shelter at the window to block the rain and the air conditioning from upstairs. After climbing to the second floor windowsill, Zheng Tan did not enter. Instead, he squatted on the windowsill. The area of the house was not big. It was about the size of a Jiao family. However, it had 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. Perhaps the old neighborhood liked to design the bedrooms to be bigger, so the living room was much smaller. This room did not have a balcony. Looking at the picture on the bedside table, it should be the child's parents' room. The door was not closed. From the windowsill, Zheng Tan could see the situation at the door. The old cat was squatting half a step away from the door. When it heard the familiar footsteps, its tail slowly wagged as it looked at the gap below the door. After the sound of the security door opening, there was no sound of the wooden door opening immediately. Below the door, a long green blade of grass stretched out from the crack. This was what the child had pulled from a flower bed in the community when he came back. Zheng Tan was puzzled when he saw this. Why was the child pulling grass? Zheng Tan had only thought that children of this age had bad hands and always wanted to play with something. Now it seemed that this was not the case. Moreover, looking at the interaction between the two, this kind of situation should have happened more than once. Perhaps it had already been going on for a few years. Tomcat looked at the swaying grass and reached out its paw to grab it. If it were Huang and the rest, they would have already jumped left and right, scratched here and there like crazy people. Even the slightest movement would cause them to act as if they had discovered a new continent. The cat did not jump left or right. Perhaps it was just as the child had said. It could not jump anymore. It did not jump as much as a young cat. Although it didn't jump much, the speed of its claws was still quite fast. After pulling the grass into the house, Tomcat bit it twice and ignored the grass nailed to its paws. It continued staring at the door. This time, it did not stare at the crack of the door. Instead, it stared at the door lock. The wooden door opened, and the child walked into the house. He threw the bowl in his hand to the side and picked up Tomcat to pat its fur before putting it down. The parents were not home, and the child's grandmother was resting in the room. The large room was divided into two. One was for the grandmother, and the other was for the child. On the dining table in the living room were cooked dishes. They were still warm, and the rice was in the rice cooker. Without eating, the child took out the red rope knitted fabric from his pocket and put it on his cat. After being put on the collar, Tomcat was not used to it. It rubbed against the corner of the table twice, but it quickly gave in under the child's comfort and stopped rubbing. The child scratched Tomcat's chin and whispered, "Don't run around. Don't fall like last time. It's not good to fall at your age. You're not young anymore, do you know that?" As for the red rope, he did not plan to tell his family the truth. If they asked, he would say that he bought it for $2. If his family found out that he spent $50 to buy something that did not even have a stone as an accessory for a cat, he would definitely be scolded. His small pocket money would also be deducted. He did not know much about the zodiac year. He only heard Nini mention that people in her neighborhood bought red ropes. He also thought about the older cat upstairs and decided to buy one. He did not necessarily believe in those things. Perhaps he was just looking for psychological comfort. While the child was eating, Tomcat seemed to want to jump onto the high stool next to the child. When it reached the stool, it looked at the stool as if it was measuring the height of the stool. It took a lot of effort to jump, but it was not as nimble as Huang and the rest. Perhaps people could not see the difference, but Zheng Tan knew the movements of cats, so he could see the difference. The child picked up a piece of chicken, rolled it in the bowl, and removed the oil and heavy sauce outside the chicken. Then he picked it up and gave it to the cat on the stool next to him. Looking at the cat eating the meat, Zheng Tan felt that although the cat looked old, it would not deteriorate quickly. It was just that she did not know how long it could live. After all, most cats only had a lifespan of about 10 years, and some had even shorter lifespans. When the child turned his head, he found that there was a black cat on the windowsill of his parents' room. However, when he walked over, the black cat had already jumped down from the windowsill. After Zheng Tan landed, he looked at the window on the second floor. He walked to the flower bed next to the building and squatted there. He planned to stay there for a while. He took a nap. When he woke up, it was about 1:30 in the afternoon. Zheng Tan woke up after hearing the voices of the two children. They should be children from the same neighborhood. They came to find the child on the second floor to go to school together. "Hey, Wang Xing, your cat is on the windowsill sending you off again," one of the children said. "Right, how is the cat upstairs?" "It's not good. I heard from my dad that the cat upstairs is already 17 years old. It's 5 years older than my cat. Last month, when it was playing with Furball, it twitched and fell to the ground. Its legs and feet are a little stiff. It used to be so fat, but now it's only 2 or 3 pounds. Yesterday, when I went upstairs, I saw the auntie feeding it water with a needle. It can't even drink water by itself." Wang Xing did not want to talk about this, so he changed the topic and said, "Are you going over there this week?" The other two children obviously knew what Wang Xing meant by there. They nodded. Of course. Are you going to? Yes. Call me if you want to go. Okay, but don't tell your family. Of course. I'm afraid that my parents will find out. After leaving the neighborhood, Zheng Tan did not follow the three children. He was hungry, so he decided to go home and eat something first. Zheng Tan saw the child named Wang Xing again on Saturday. In the morning he went out with the Jiaopa. The Jiaopa went to the courtyard, and Zheng Tan ran around the school. Exercising was a must. When he saw the three children, they were holding a plastic bag in their hands. The bag was already filled with empty bottles, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, and so on. The there they were talking about was Tsinghua University. The consumption of students in the university was huge, so there were a lot of empty bottles. Even though the weather was still cool, there were still many bottles. Zheng Tan followed them not far away, watching them pick out empty bottles from the trash can or the garbage dump. As they picked up the bottles, the three children talked to each other. It should be the first time that the child named Wang Xing did this. The other two children were telling him about their experiences. Other than the mineral water bottles, there were also cans. They talked about which were aluminum and which were iron, which were bought and which were not, which were expensive and which were cheap. It seemed that these two children had done this many times. Wang Xing dragged the bag. This bag was used by his grandmother to store mattresses. Later on, there were a few holes in it, but she could not bear to throw it away. She kept it in the corner of the junk pile. It had been 2 to 3 years, and when he dug it out, the bag was covered in dust. It did not matter if there were holes. Although there were many holes, they were not big. It was enough for him to store the bottles. In the morning they were able to pick up a lot of bottles. Then, they would drag them to the scrap store to sell. A bag full of bottles could be sold for about 4 yuan after the price was calculated according to the different categories. What happened after they bought it? The two children took the money and went to the internet cafe. They decided to stay there for 2 to 3 hours in the afternoon. Zheng Tan was speechless. So they picked up the bottles for this reason? But this was also considered as self-reliance. Wang Xing did not go. Although he also wanted to play computer games, he was still in debt. He made an appointment with the two children, and took the bag himself to pick up the bottles. Zheng Tan had nothing to do today, so he followed the child to see how many bottles he would pick up. As they walked, they came to the back of the Institute of Biological Sciences. There was a big trash can there. Wang Xing saw a few bottles, and wanted to go over. Unexpectedly, when he was about to touch them, his arm was pushed. He looked sideways and saw a black cat. Black cat again? Wang Xing frowned and did not intend to pay attention to it. He raised his hand to pick up the bottles again. This time he was not stopped by the cat, but by someone. A cleaner who was in charge of cleaning here told Wang Xing that the things in here were very dangerous. He could not pick them up with his bare hands. The garbage here had to be specially treated, and would not be mixed with ordinary garbage. Zheng Tan also knew this. It was because of this that he stopped Wang Xing when he was going to pick up the bottles. After the cleaner left, Wang Xing looked at the big trash cans and turned to Zheng Tan and said, "Thank you." He now somewhat understood the black cat's actions. At the back door, there was a person in a white lab coat dragging a big trash can out. Wang Xing planned to leave first. Since the bottles here were more dangerous, then he would change to another place. It was better not to get hurt just to pick up the bottles. Black charcoal. Wang Xing paused when he heard the voice. He didn't know who the person was calling, but he felt a little guilty for picking up bottles at someone else's place. He planned to leave quickly, but the person over there seemed to be shouting in his direction. Zheng Tan looked at the person and sighed in his heart. It could not be helped. He would meet acquaintances wherever he went. The person who dragged the trash can out was one of Jiaopa's students, the big guy Su Chu. He was now the second in Jiaopa. After Exian graduated and went abroad this year, he would be promoted to a senior. However, his personality did not change much. For people like him who had a master's degree and doctorate for a few years, their personality would not change much. Compared to people of the same age who had entered society earlier, their personalities were still much simpler. "Hey, who is this child?" Su Chu looked at the child next to Zheng Tan and asked. Chapter 335. Today, it was Su Chu's turn to be on duty in the lab. The trash can in the lab was full, so he pulled it out. He didn't expect to see the boss's cat when he came out of the back door. The master students under Professor Jiao all knew that the boss's cat had a high status. Don't look down on it, or you'll suffer. Su Chu, who had received a favor before entering the lab, was really grateful to the cat. After a few years, they had become very close. However, Su Chu had never seen the kid standing next to the cat. He didn't look like a relative of the boss. As for the snakeskin bag, Su Chu was tall, so he could see the empty bottles in the bag after a few steps. He immediately understood what the kid was doing. Seeing that the kid was about to leave, Su Chu quickly said, "Hey, don't go. I still have a lot of bottles. Do you want them?" Wang Xing, who had just taken a step, stopped again. He was too embarrassed to speak. However, Su Chu didn't wait for him to speak. He put the trash can down and said, "Wait a minute." Then he ran into the building. Wang Xing stood there and looked at the person running into the building. He then looked at the black cat next to him and whispered, "Hey, black cat, is that someone you know?" Zheng Tan waited on the side. He once saw a study room outside the window. There were many students who pushed their drink bottles and mineral water bottles in the corner. They didn't necessarily want to sell them for money. Those who drank often didn't lack money. They were just lazy and would throw them away when they accumulated more. Su Chu came out quickly. Behind Su Chu were a man and a woman. They didn't wear white lab coats. They probably came out from other study rooms after hearing Su Chu's words. The three of them were either holding or hugging a pile of bottles. Some were plastic, and some were aluminum. Some students weren't used to the boiled water here. They found it smelly and often drank purified water or vitamin drinks. Therefore, there were many bottles of this kind. The three of them put the bottles in the snakeskin bag. They didn't let Wang Xing do it himself. Wang Xing stood awkwardly on the side. He didn't know what to say. He just blushed and said thank you. A student that Zheng Tan didn't know helped Wang Xing organize the things while giving him advice. "Little brother, let me tell you something. You probably won't be able to find these aluminum cans in the Hua Institute. There are people there who are doing research on recycling precious metals. You won't be able to find any aluminum cans there, so you don't have to go there. There may be a few places where there may be a lot, but don't go to the old student dormitory area. The area there has been completely divided by several building managers. A kid like you will probably be at a disadvantage if you go there. Also, there are several waste collection places in our school, but the boss of one of them is better. You can sell it for more money. You can go to the small hardware store at the school gate and buy a pair of ordinary cotton gloves that cost 1 yuan. It's safer that way." When Zheng Tan heard, "I'm telling you," he knew that there would be a lot of things to say. This person was really long-winded. However, he said it in detail. Wang Xing also listened very carefully. Understanding more could save a lot of time and improve efficiency. This person said that he also did this kind of thing when he was an undergraduate. Although the word waste collection was embarrassing, it could sell a lot of money in a day. In the past, he picked up things with his classmates for novelty. The people in the dormitory added a week's worth of meals. Later, he stopped because of his studies. Just like the Environmental Protection Association, there are people who openly ride a 3-wheeled motorcycle in the name of environmental protection and wander around the school all day long to pick up things. I heard that someone used the money from the waste collection to buy a small electric car. That arrogant look. In addition to giving Wang Xing advice, they also told Wang Xing that the trash cans in some places shouldn't be rummaged through. Just like the trash cans in their courtyard, there may be more harmful substances in them. Although toxic and dangerous things wouldn't be thrown here. Even if it was just a very ordinary empty bottle, you wouldn't know what was in the bottle, whether it was thrown away by someone, whether there were drug residues in the bottle, and whether there would be other harm. Generally, the trash cans here wouldn't be left for too long. Soon someone would come and take them away. The cleaner auntie just dragged away one, and now she came again. She put down the empty trash cans and dragged away the full ones. "Thank you, brother and sister." Wang Xing looked at the bag full of bottles and said, "Io, what are you thanking us for? Little brother, when will you come again? We will keep them for you." "Sai, If you come over during the summer, there will be more. We don't have summer holidays here. If you want, you can come over during the summer. The woman said. In the school, many children directly called them uncle and auntie. It was rare to hear them call them brother and sister. His mood suddenly became better. After Su Chu and the others entered the building, Wang Xing dragged the bag full of bottles and went to another place that sold waste that the person told him just now. He picked up some more along the way. At the place where he and his classmates went before, not only did the person who collected the waste reduce the price, but he was also very precise. Therefore, Wang Xing decided to try another place. Just like what the graduate student said, although the place that collected the waste was a little far, it was only a little far. This time Wang Xing sold a lot, so the price was a little higher. He also had more money. The person even rounded it up. Originally it was 60 yuan, but he directly gave Wang Xing 6 yuan. Wang Xing carefully put the money into his inner pocket. He was thinking about whether he should change to a bigger bag tomorrow. They were all empty bottles, and they were not heavy. He also had the strength to carry them. With experience, it was easy. The first time he was unfamiliar, the second time he was familiar with it. In addition, there were people who gave him advice, so his efficiency also increased. Wang Xing went 3 times in the afternoon. Adding the money he sold in the morning, he made a total of 23 yuan. For Wang Xing, 20 yuan was a lot. He saved for 2 months and only managed to save 30 yuan. Today, he sold more than 20 yuan, which was enough to pay off his debt. He would continue tomorrow on Sunday. If he could come over every weekend, he would not need to pay for his living expenses. He could also buy some things for his family, as long as he could put down his pride. Seeing that it was almost time, Wang Xing went to the internet cafe to find his classmates and then went back together. After that, as long as there was no heavy rain, Zheng Tan could basically see Wang Xing's figure on campus every weekend. Zheng Tan went to Wang Xing's neighborhood several times. Every time he went, the old cat would squat by the windowsill on the 2nd floor of the building. Whether it could get some sun or not, it would always squat there with a red rope around its neck and squint its eyes. When it saw Zheng Tan, the cat only opened its squinted eyes a little and looked down at Zheng Tan, who was standing downstairs. Cats always liked to squat at high places and look down, whether it was a kitten or an old cat. According to Wang Xing, this old cat was a popular character in this area when it was young. However, Wang Xing did not remember much at that time. Some of it was what he heard from his parents, and some of it he remembered. When Wang Xing was very young, he got into a fight with a kid who was 1 year older than him in the community. His cat even went to help him and scratched the kid. Wang Xing's parents came to his house with gifts to apologize, and they even paid for the injection. Because of this, Wang Xing's parents almost sent the cat away, saying that it scratched people. If Wang Xing had not cried and rolled on the ground and refused to let them send the cat away, perhaps he would not have seen the old cat now. For many children, going home after school was a very happy thing. Other than not having to sit in the classroom and be restrained, they were also thinking about cartoons and TV series. Wang Xing's happiest thing when he went home every day was to pull a weed and squat in front of his house to play with the cat on the other side of the door. In the summer, he would also catch some small insects like grasshoppers for his cat to play with. People who did not have a cat could not understand the feelings of people who had lived with cats for a few years, or even 10 or 20 years. Wang Xing was willing to spend a large amount of money to buy a cat, some hope that he did not know whether it was real or not. Looking at the old cat on the windowsill, Zheng Tan turned around and left. The old cat on the windowsill opened its eyes a little. The sun was too strong for it to open its eyes. It squinted and looked at the black cat who was walking further and further away. It yawned and raised its paws to lick them. It did not care if the paws were still sharp or if it could still fight, but it still licked seriously. It was a habit, a natural instinct, or perhaps other emotions. Then it calmly looked at the neighborhood that it could not be more familiar with. The azaleas were blooming, and the sun was still shining. After hesitating for a while, Zheng Tan found some time and went to the old woman with the money in his vest. He did not buy a bracelet. The old woman introduced him to a waist chain with some small stones on it. He did not know what material it was made of. Zheng Tan did not know much about it and had never studied it before, but it looked quite beautiful. However, when the old woman offered a price of 1,000, Zheng Tan could not help but shake his beard twice. Zheng Tan's private stash of money that he had saved up in his drawer was just 1,000 yuan. This old woman had really pinched it well. In the end, Zheng Tan gritted his teeth and bought it. His private stash was basically emptied. If this was the old Zheng Tan who spent money extravagantly, he would have made more than this in a day of picking up girls. However, Zheng Tan's situation was different now. It was not convenient for him to withdraw money from his card, so he could only earn overtime. Hopefully, I can work more overtime next month, Zheng Tan thought to himself. The old woman made the waist chain at the last minute. Zheng Tan squatted at the side and watched, closely observing how the old woman used her trembling hands to quickly make complicated knots. The knots were not all the same. Zheng Tan did not know what pattern was used to weave the chain. Anyway, as she looked at it, she could not figure it out. A third of the chain was finished. She looked at it again and again, and then it was finished. The old woman took out the money from Zheng Tan's vest and put it into the box of money without counting it. Then she put the waist chain in a small cloth bag and put it into Zheng Tan's vest pocket. Her old face was full of wrinkles from smiling. When he saw little Pomelo happily put on the waist chain, Zheng Tan suddenly felt less distressed about the money. He hoped that little Pomelo would not be as unlucky as Boss Kai. Speaking of Boss Kai, who could be attacked, even when he was lying down, he was in a good mood recently. He launched 2 new dishes, and the restaurant was still very popular. He also took the time to take his wife and children from Nanqing to travel around. Zheng Tan had not seen Boss Kai for a few days in a row. However, although Boss Kai was not there, he had told the manager that when Zheng Tan came over, he only needed to wait in Boss Kai's lounge, and he would be able to eat soon. Zheng Tan suddenly felt a little guilty about stretching out his arms and opening his mouth to eat. However, that was only a momentary feeling. He still enjoyed what he should enjoy. Since he had been forced to become a cat, why couldn't he enjoy some special treatment? On this day, when Zheng Tan went to eat, he met an acquaintance again. Lu Ba and Jin Gui. Chapter 336. Some time ago, Lu Ba had been busy with something outside, and was not in Chuhua City at all. As for the number 46, that he had been paying attention to, every time he called, the phone was turned off. This made Lu Ba think that the person had directly abandoned the number. He even added 200 yuan to the number. Unfortunately, there was no news from the other party until now. Zheng Tan did not know that someone had added money to his number. He did not turn on his phone now. Except for the novelty of holding the phone in the beginning, he was bored later. He could not call others to chat. What would he say if he called? How? There were only so many people he knew. Moreover, he could not talk, so he put his phone there temporarily. When Zheng Tan saw Lu Ba, he had just finished eating and jumped out of the window of Boss Kai's lounge. Lu Ba happened to see him. Hey, the cat is stealing food. Lu Ba shouted at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan. Steal your sister. Do I need to steal food here? After glancing at Lu Ba, Zheng Tan planned to ignore him and leave directly. He did not expect that Lu Ba would follow him. After Lu Ba went out and returned to Chuhua City, he was dragged by Jin Gui to eat food. Jin Gui liked food very much. He had recommended it to Lu Ba several times. It was rare for new dishes to be served, so he dragged Lu Ba here. They had just finished eating and planned to go back to Jin Gui's place. However, they did not expect to meet Zheng Tan. Lu Ba changed his mind and decided to walk with Zheng Tan to digest the food. Anyway, he had nothing to do. He came to Chuhua City to have a good rest for a few days. He called that number again this morning, but it was still the same. The other party's phone was turned off. He did not know what to do. It was boring. Should he go to a bar and find a girl to spend the night with tonight? Zheng Tan did not intend to pay attention to the 2 people behind him. He did not deliberately walk fast. Why should he walk so fast when he was full? Why should he torment himself for the 2 people behind him? Out of sight, out of mind. He just ignored the 2 people behind him. However, after hearing what the golden turtle said to Liu Ba, Zheng Tan couldn't help but pay attention to their conversation. According to the golden turtle, Liu Ba was going to a small city in the northern part of Sichuan province at the beginning of next month. She had probably received another order. It was already April, and the next month would be May. At the beginning of May, Liu Ba would go to North Shu. Zheng Tan couldn't help but think of the natural disaster he had posted on the forum a few days ago when he secretly went online. Back then, Zheng Tan actually didn't pay much attention to the disaster and didn't know much about it. He only had a general idea. At that time he was still a heartless fool, playing games and picking up girls crazily, wasting away his years in mediocrity. Now he wanted to tell more people what he knew, but in less than a minute after he posted the post, his account was banned and deleted. The reason was that he was spreading rumors, destroying harmony, and was banned without discussion. Well, Zheng Tan didn't know what to do now. If he was a human, it would be a little easier. However, he was now a cat, and his means were limited. Among the people he knew, it seemed that no one would go there. Zheng Tan had been struggling for several nights. However, now that he heard that Liu Ba was going to North Shu, Zheng Tan had an idea. If he couldn't do it himself, he could ask others for help. He just didn't know if Liu Ba would believe him. After returning to Tsinghua University, Zheng Tan rarely checked his phone. It was turned off and had no battery, so he had to charge it. The good thing was that the quality of the phone was good. After leaving it here for so long, it was still in good condition after charging it. There were many messages and prompts. Zheng Tan looked at them one by one, and deleted them one by one. He found that there was a message to charge the phone, which surprised Zheng Tan. Looking at the message behind Liu Ba, although it didn't say clearly, Zheng Tan could guess that it was Liu Ba who helped to charge the phone. Zheng Tan didn't contact Liu Ba immediately. Instead, he sent a message to Liu Ba a week later, asking if he would change his account number next month. Liu Ba, who was watching Animal World and yawning in boredom on the sofa, immediately became energetic when he saw the familiar number. He dialed it directly. As usual, the other party refused to answer. However, after reading the message, Liu Ba replied seriously. He would still use this account next month. At the same time, he gave Liu Ba another number. If Liu Ba couldn't get through with this account, he could call another one. There was always one who could. Zheng Tan asked Liu Ba whether he would go on a long trip next month. After a while, Liu Ba replied. He only said that he would go on a long trip, but didn't say where he would go. He couldn't tell Liu Ba many things related to business as he did with Jin Gui. After getting the information he wanted, Zheng Tan directly turned off his phone. Liu Ba made several calls in succession. Listening to the familiar prompts, he put down the phone and wondered what the other party meant. He always felt that the other party seemed to want to tell him something very important. Liu Ba always kept this matter in mind. On the day he left Tsinghua City, he called that number again, but the other party's phone was turned off. Therefore, he sent a message saying that he would leave Tsinghua City today. Zheng Tan looked at the wall calendar in the living room at home and counted the time. He turned on his phone almost every day. The time was not fixed. Sometimes it was morning, sometimes it was night. Because of this, he didn't meet Liu Ba. Therefore, when he called, the phone was turned off. After seeing Liu Ba's message, Zheng Tan didn't reply. If he replied now, the other party would definitely start to call him again. There was still a week before the date that Zheng Tan circled. Zheng Tan thought that Liu Ba's situation should be stable and he could talk about it. Therefore, after dinner, he slipped out and went to the old tile-roofed housing area. At this time of night, the old tile-roofed housing area was always very quiet. This could save Zheng Tan a lot of trouble. If there were other noises, Zheng Tan was afraid that Liu Ba would guess the specific location based on the sound. After turning on his phone, he read a few messages. Liu Ba was probably busy during the mission period, so there were fewer messages. They were all unimportant messages. All of them were asking Zheng Tan what he wanted to talk about. After deleting them, Zheng Tan wrote a message asking Liu Ba what she was doing at the moment. He couldn't just call her directly. If he messed up Liu Ba's mission, Zheng Tan was worried that Liu Ba wouldn't cooperate. However, Liu Ba quickly replied, taking a dump. Zheng Tan didn't know what to say. At this moment, in a relatively good hotel in a small city in the northern part of Sichuan, Liu Ba was having dinner with someone. Halfway through, he left to go to the bathroom. He drained the water and smoked to relax. There were too many people coming and going, so he simply found a room and closed the door to sit on the toilet seat. No one would disturb him, so it was convenient for him to think about things and wait for time. A man and a woman had just entered the room next to his. They drank too much but were in high spirits. They were having sex in the next room, and didn't care whether it was a men's room or a women's room. Flirtatious sounds were incessant. There were a few people who came to the bathroom. Even though they couldn't see the situation inside, they still whistled obscenely. Liuba planned to squat inside and eavesdrop for a while. Anyway, the group of people in the private room over there were drunk. He waited until they were almost drunk before going back. He didn't expect to receive that message at this time. Liu Ba was the one who replied to the text message Zheng Tan received while sitting on the toilet seat. After thinking for a while, Zheng Tan sent another message. I have something to tell you. Okay, I'm all ears. Sitting on the toilet seat, Liu Ba took out a very small earphone from his pocket and put it on. It isolated the noise outside, so that he could better hear the voice from the phone when he made a call. Just as Liu Ba was about to dial, a phone call came in. Liu Ba raised his eyebrows. It was rare. This mysterious guy actually took the initiative to call. Did he have something to ask for help? Thinking quickly, Liu Ba pressed the answer button and listened attentively to the voice in the earphone. However, after waiting for a while, he found that there was no response from the other side. When the call was just connected, Zheng Tan almost spat out the dinner he had just eaten. He listened to some sounds on the other side of the phone and didn't say anything for a long time. He could imagine what the situation was on the other side. He deeply doubted whether Liu Ba was seriously taking a dump or watching something that was not suitable for children. After Liu Ba said hello twice, Zheng Tan continued to do what he wanted to do. Zheng Tan didn't send a message to tell her about it. Instead, he chose this way. Of course, he had his own considerations. Liu Ba wore the earphone. Although it was very noisy next door, the earphone could clearly hear the voice from the other side of the phone. At the same time, if the call involved confidential information, he could use the voice next door as a cover. He didn't need to be afraid of being heard by others. After all, they would pay attention to the other side of the phone. There was still no sound from the other side of the phone. Through the earphone there was still a tapping sound. Liu Ba was prepared. When the call was connected, he took out a folded pen and a small piece of paper from his pocket. With the tapping sound from the earphone, a sentence appeared on the paper. It was written in pinyin. Looking at the sentence on the paper, Liu Ba spelled it 3 times. He wondered if he had spelled it wrong and misunderstood the meaning. The other side of the phone had hung up. After the call ended, he received a message. Do you understand? I don't think I understand. Looking at the sentence on the paper, Liu Ba still found it hard to believe. Zheng Tan didn't think that Liu Ba really didn't understand. It was normal for him to be suspicious when he first heard this kind of thing. If you understand, tell as many people as possible. After Zheng Tan sent this message, he directly turned off his phone. He chose Liu Ba to help him purely based on his intuition. He felt that Liu Ba could do things that he couldn't. Moreover, he wouldn't leak the secret and could even do things better. On the other hand, Liu Ba was in a rather complicated mood now. Rationally speaking, the credibility of this message wasn't high. After all, no one could predict the future, let alone this kind of message that made people shudder all over. If it was someone who didn't know anything, it would be fine. However, Liu Ba had experienced a lot of things, including natural and man-made disasters. It was because of this that he could deduce several results from this short sentence. Each result was quite tragic. Putting the earphone back into his pocket, Liu Ba sat on the toilet lid and looked at the piece of paper in his hand, lost in thought. The battle next door was still fierce, but Liu Ba turned a deaf ear to it. He didn't have time to think about other things now. Instead, he carefully analyzed the possibility of the message on the piece of paper being true. Or was it a trick of the other party to fool him? When Liu Ba came back to his senses, the person next door had already left. There was no one else in the bathroom, and it was very quiet. The soundproofing effect here was very good, and the noise outside couldn't be heard. Liu Ba tore the piece of paper into pieces and flushed them away in the toilet. In the bathroom, a drunkard had smashed the light with his mobile phone. There was a broken mobile phone on the floor of the bathroom, and 2 of the lights on the ceiling were broken. It was much dimmer, and one of them was still flickering, adding a sense of strangeness. There was an open window in the bathroom, and the night wind blew in, making it a little cold. Chapter 337. Lu Ba did not know if the other party was telling the truth, but he would still do some things and tell some people. He would also be on guard. As for whether other people believed him or not, he could not control their thoughts. If he was not sure about something, there was no reason to force others to do it. Ever since that day, Lu Ba would call others whenever he was free for the next few days. He would call 46s, but unfortunately, the phone was turned off every time he called. Looking at the date displayed on the phone and the time mentioned by the other party, Lu Ba was anxious, which was rare. In the past, even if he accepted a very dangerous job, he would not be so anxious. Although he did not show it on his face and others could not see it, the feeling of not being able to vent it in his heart made Lu Ba almost go crazy. An earthquake with a magnitude of 8. Was this a joke? If it happened in Chuhua City, there would not be many buildings left standing. In Chuhua City, Zheng Tan still lived according to his daily habits. He looked the same as usual, but when he was alone at home, he would secretly turn on the computer and surf the internet. In fact, it was not considered secretly. Zheng Tan did not pay attention and left some clues behind. That day, the Jiaopa picked up a strand of cat hair from the keyboard and glanced at Zheng Tan. Then he did not say anything else. There was no other unusual emotion on his face. This made Zheng Tan even more certain that the Jiaopa must have known something. The day was getting closer and closer. On that day, Zheng Tan did not go out. He stayed at home the whole day, opened the internet, and paid attention to a few websites. Zheng Tan did not pay attention to this matter at that time, so the time in his memory was not accurate. He only remembered a rough idea. Therefore, he stayed in front of the computer and waited. The information on the internet should be faster than the news on TV. Moreover, Chuhua City was not in the earthquake zone, and was far from the epicenter. There should be no problem. This was also the reason why Zheng Tan stayed at home, even though he knew that there would be an abnormality today. He went out for lunch at noon, and came back to lie in front of the computer. After taking a short nap, he refreshed the internet after waking up. Just as Zheng Tan clicked the mouse, he suddenly felt a shake. They're here. Some people in the school sensed it, and came out of the building. Some students who were doing experiments in the laboratory quickly ran out after sensing it. However, most people didn't notice it. Some people were sleeping in the dormitory, and some were paying attention to other things. They didn't realize what had happened at all. Zheng Tan refreshed the webpage. There were not many reports yet. He wandered around the house and then ran out. When he came to the old tile-roofed housing area, he dialed Lu Ba's number. He couldn't get through. He called again, but he still couldn't get through. Zheng Tan thought about it. He had already told Liu Ba about what had happened. Yesterday, he had specially sent her a text message to remind her to remember what he had said that day. Liu Ba had also replied. She should have been prepared. But now, her phone could not be reached. It might not necessarily be Lu Ba who was in trouble. It might be a communication malfunction. That night, the newspapers, and the internet were all talking about the earthquake in northwest Sichuan that afternoon. Many students called their classmates, friends, and relatives over there, but they couldn't get through. There were many situations where the line was busy. Zheng Tan went out and called Lu Ba again, but he still couldn't get through. Perhaps Lu Ba was in a more remote place and not in a big city. If she was in a remote mountainous area near the epicenter of the earthquake, she would probably encounter a lot of trouble. That night, many people were destined to have a sleepless night. Zheng Tan didn't stay at home the next day. He ran to the old tile-roofed housing area, turned on his phone and waited. He was eager to know about Lu Ba's situation, how many people had taken precautions, and how many people had survived because of it. While Zheng Tan was waiting, in a small town some distance away from the city in northern Sichuan, many of the original residential buildings had collapsed, and there was no road on the ground. Lu Ba sat on the ruins. There was nothing he could do. There were ruins everywhere. He hadn't closed his eyes since yesterday afternoon. At that time, the inspection team he was part of was inspecting a primary school. He spent some effort a day in advance to persuade the leader to have a school-wide meeting in the afternoon on the spacious playground. The playground was very big. When the earthquake happened, a part of the teaching building collapsed. Although there was chaos at that time, most of the buildings survived. As for Lu Ba himself, he had been helping with the rescue with a few people in the team. He only sat down to catch his breath now. If he didn't rest, he would probably fall down directly. His face was covered in dust, his head was dizzy, and his eyes were bloodshot. If this happened in the past, Lu Ba would never have thought that he would risk his life to save people. It was good enough that he could escape. But now he didn't eat. He only drank a few mouthfuls of dirty water. He was in a sorry state as he followed a few people to save survivors from the ruins. There was a person in the team who seemed to be very timid. Lu Ba had always felt that this person was too weak and didn't look like a man. However, this person had been working with Lu Ba and the others since yesterday. His condition was worse than Lu Ba's. He almost fell down just now, so he was forced to rest. In this state, not only would he suffer, but he might also make mistakes when saving people. The aftershocks were still going on. Hero? Bear? Only when one really reached that point could one tell. Perhaps even the person himself didn't know how far he could go. Liu Ba pinched the corner of her eyes with her dusty and wounded hand. She fumbled in her pocket and took out a twisted cigarette. The lighter was gone, but there was a mini lighter on the key string. After lighting it up, Liu Ba took a puff of the cigarette. His hands, which used to be able to untie ropes when he was tied up, were shaking uncontrollably now. Lu Ba had always boasted that he could remain calm in the face of danger. But now, he knew that he had overestimated himself. He looked up at the sky. There was no sunlight, and the sky was overcast. He was reborn, but strangely he didn't feel much joy. If only he could tell more people. But there was no if in the world. The tobacco softened the stiffness caused by fear and fatigue. It also gave him some strength. Not far ahead, the cracked ground was like a hole that was forcibly torn in people's hearts. They didn't know how many heart-wrenching cries they heard around them. In the face of cruel nature, human life was so fragile. It was gone in the blink of an eye. The greatness and ostentatiousness of the past were also so fragile. He took out his cell phone from his trouser pocket. At that time, all communications were cut off, so he couldn't make a call. He didn't use it. Later, when he was helping to save people, he fell and was almost smashed by the cement board above. Fortunately, the card should still be usable. Moreover, he still had a cell phone in his backpack. Now that communications had not been restored, he still couldn't use it. After smoking a cigarette, Lu Ba felt that he had some strength and his mind was much clearer. He got up and patted the dust off his body. He continued to help save people and carry out those who had already been killed. Zheng Tan received a call from Lu Ba on the third day of the earthquake. After Lu Ba could make calls, he received many calls and text messages from people. Lu Ba didn't have any relatives. Most of them were his friends, and people he had reminded a few days ago. There weren't many people who could really be considered his friends. Jin Gui was one of them, and he was also one of the few people who knew about Lu Ba's whereabouts. You're really still King alive. Jin Gui hadn't slept for the past 2 days. Every now and then, he would make a call and pay attention to relevant information on the internet. Now he finally made the call. Lu Ba didn't say much to Jin Gui. Time was tight. After confirming that Lu Ba was still alive, Jin Gui's tense nerves relaxed. After giving some simple instructions, he went to sleep. In addition to Jin Gui, Lu Ba also received a few calls and quickly browsed through the information on his cell phone. Although he was young, he had received a lot of orders and knew some people in this province. There were people from all walks of life, and some of them even held high positions in the system. After the shock, fear, and grief, these people all called Lu Ba to ask about the situation. How did Lu Ba know about this? This was a natural disaster, not a man-made one. It was extremely difficult to be sure. If Lu Ba hadn't reminded them, they might have been buried under the ruins. Lu Ba ignored them for the time being. He changed his SIM card and installed the card in the broken cell phone. Then he dialed Lu Ba's number. This time he didn't turn off his cell phone. The call was quickly connected. Lu Ba took a deep breath and suddenly didn't know what to say. There was still an unchanged silence on the other end. The heavy silence lasted for nearly a minute. Then Lu Ba spoke. His voice was a little hoarse. Who are you? There were too many questions, too many whys, and too many inconceivable things. In the end, he only asked this question. Lu Ba had asked this question many times, but he had never been so eager to know the other party's identity. The prophecy had come true. The doubts and suspicions he had when he sat on the toilet seat were now gone. If it hadn't been for the other party, he would have been buried under the ruins with the members of the investigation group. There might not have been so many survivors in that primary school. Who are you? Lu Ba asked again because of the other party's silence. Although his voice was not loud and sounded weak and tired, there was a sense of persistence in his voice. It seemed that if the other party didn't tell him, he would do his best to find out the result. There was another period of silence. Who are you? He asked for the third time. He enunciated each word clearly. The emotion contained in his words was even stronger than the previous one. Lu Ba thought that the other party still didn't intend to tell him after he asked for the third time. When the other party hung up the phone, there was a slight rustling sound on the other end of the phone. Lu Ba didn't have her earphones because they were broken yesterday. Therefore, she pressed the handset against her ear and focused all her attention on it. The tapping sound came from the handset. Lu Ba raised his hand and wrote letters on a cracked wooden board in front of him that was covered with a layer of dust. The skin of his fingers was a little dry. When he moved, the wound split open. Lu Ba seemed to be unaware of it and focused on writing the 5 translated letters on the wooden board. Ghusti ghost? Ghost. Before Lu Ba had time to think deeply, the beeping sound of the phone being hung up came from the handset. As soon as he hung up, he received another call. Lu Ba answered the call. At the same time, she wiped the dust on the wooden board with the palm that wasn't holding the phone. The 5 letters disappeared as well. F*ck. Lu Ba, are you okay? I was almost buried under my own house. F*ck, if you didn't remind me. Alright you. How did you know this? Who told you this? The person who could call out the name Lu Ba directly and in such a tone obviously had a good relationship with Lu Ba. God. Lu Ba took a deep breath and sighed softly. You King donkey? You can't be like this. Without waiting for the other party to say more, Lu Ba hung up the phone and turned it to silent mode. She looked at the post-disaster town in her field of vision and walked forward. Ghost? God. It didn't matter. Chapter 338. Because of this disaster, the whole country was filled with a heavy atmosphere. There were also students under the Jiaopa who were from there. Although they were not in the disaster area, the Jiaopa still gave the student a break and let the student go home first to have a look and feel at ease. Many departments in the school had organized donations, and there were more or less students in each department who were from there. Zhang Tan basically didn't go out now. Wherever he went, he could hear people discussing the earthquake. The headlines in the newspapers, the daily news, the school's morning broadcast, the campus's fundraising publicity. Zhang Tan didn't pay attention to it back then. Now that he had experienced it, he understood that the reality was much worse than he had imagined. Flipping through the webpage, there was a post that recorded the photos taken by volunteers there. A child with a bandage on his forehead looked at the ruins in a daze. A man who was older than the Jiaopa knelt on the ground and cried in a mess. During this period, Zhang Tan occasionally met Ajin, who had come out for a walk with sunglasses. According to him, they had originally planned to go to the disaster area immediately, but they had been persuaded by their agent. On one hand, it was dangerous. On the other hand, the first 72 hours should be left to the professional rescue team and experienced volunteers. Celebrities like them would not only not be of help, but might even bring a lot of trouble. Just like what some volunteers on the internet said, after they went to the disaster area with passion, they realized that they had no experience. Sometimes they could not even be of use. Those who had seen a huge disaster rescue scene would feel that they were insignificant. However, they could learn and help as much as they could. A week later, many entertainment websites turned black and white to mourn the victims of the disaster. Xiaoguo's Pet Center's official website also turned black and white. At the same time, Xiaoguo hung a letter on the website's homepage. The content of the letter was that their studio would be closed for a month. In other words, there would be no new advertisements or videos for a month. Xiaoguo himself would also take some of his subordinates to the disaster area. This wasn't originally decided by Xiao Guo himself, but after all, he held an important position in the Green Wings Association, and the Green Wings Association had to send people over to provide disaster relief. They also had to bring some relief supplies over. Since the other associations had contributed, there was no reason for the Green Wings Association to ignore it. Speaking of this, the person who had originally arranged for this mission was not Xiao Guo. After all, Xiao Guo was really too busy. However, the person who had arranged for this mission found an excuse to reject it. That person had heard from some sources that the number of rescue workers who had been sacrificed was much higher than what was reported. Now that there were still aftershocks, it was still very dangerous. So he cancelled his original plan of using this incident to give himself more glory. After all, glory was not as important as his life. After Xiao Guo learned about it, he didn't say too much. He chatted with several senior managers for a while, then went back to take care of the pet center. The next day after the meeting, he took people to the disaster area. Zheng Tan browsed the pet center's official website every day, and there were many people's comments. There was a donation record next to the official website's homepage. Although it didn't show the names of real people, every donation was recorded. When the time came, all the money would be donated to the people in the disaster area. Many of the pet center's customers were nouveau riche. Previously, some people had donated through other channels, but they had donated a lot here. Among them, there were some familiar IDs that Zheng Tan could match. Zheng Tan used to dislike a few of them, thinking that they were bad-tempered and pretentious. But now, it seemed that this wasn't completely the case. From their comments, it could be seen that some of them had even volunteered and posted some photos. Armani had become F*King F*King. Zheng Tan also donated. He gave his card to Jiao and the others had their own trusted channels to donate. After the donation, Zheng Tan's savings directly shrank by half. The donation during the new year didn't account for a large proportion of his savings, but it was different this time. After putting the card returned by Jiao back into the drawer and locking it, Zheng Tan thought that after this incident, he would have to work hard. While paying attention to the disaster relief, Zheng Tan also searched for some information. Now many people on the internet posted that there were various signs before the earthquake, and some people had already made predictions. Others thought that it was nonsense. The two sides quarreled non-stop. In the end, someone couldn't stand it and attacked both sides. After such a thing had happened, wasn't it messy? If they had so much time to quarrel, they might as well do more practical things and help more people. All they did was stay on the internet and criticize people. Did they really think that they were some big shot? There were many such posts. Zheng Tan couldn't be sure which ones were true, which ones were made up, and which ones were influenced by him. In short, in the end, they were all mixed up by some people. If Lu Ba really told a lot of people that 1/5 of the situations mentioned in these posts were caused by Lu Ba, then it would be considered good, and it would save a lot of people. He just didn't know if someone would investigate further after the incident. In order to avoid those unexpected troubles, Zheng Tan decided not to turn on his mobile phone recently. Zheng Tan took out his SIM card and hid it. Because there was no mission at the pet center for nearly a month, and Xiao Guo and the others were not there, Zheng Tan didn't go there. However, Zheng Tan didn't go there. Instead, a phone call came in. Charlie called directly to Jiaopa's mobile phone. Therefore, after dinner that day, Jiaopa didn't go to the courtyard again. Instead, he took Zheng Tan to the pet center. The cats in the studio and the cats adopted by the pet center were not together. For example, the American short-hair prince, who often filmed advertisements, had his cat nest in the studio. Xiao Guo did this to let them be more familiar with the atmosphere of the studio. After all, cats couldn't adapt well in unfamiliar places. After the studio was expanded and renovated, now the studio was like a cat playground. There were many cat ladders and aisles from the corners to the ceiling. As Xiao Guo said, cats also had tempers and emotions. When they were in a good mood, their eyes would be brighter when shooting. Now Xiao Guo took people to the disaster area. According to the information he posted on the homepage of the official website, it would take at least half a month. It had only been a week, and he wouldn't be back so soon. Xiao Guo indeed didn't come back. When Zheng Tan entered the studio, there wasn't anyone there. Only Charlie and another staff member were there. The staff member had gone to the disaster area with Xiaogua. He was accidentally injured during the aftershock, and his physical condition wasn't very good. Therefore, he was sent back by Xiaogua. There were also a few people from the Green Wings association with him. However, after returning to Chuhua City, they separated. He returned to the pet center, and Charlie went to pick him up. There was also a cat returning to the pet center with the staff member. It looked like it was 2 months old, and its fur was the same color as Huang. It was also an ordinary field cat, but this little yellow cat had lost its forelimbs. According to the staff member, it was injured in the earthquake. After it was rescued, it was amputated. Originally, it was thought that the kitten's immunity was poor, and after the accident and surgery, it would be difficult for it to survive. Unexpectedly, it really recovered. After the amputation, it caused inflammation and swelling. Although it had been treated for several days and the kitten had recovered, it still looked listless. Charlie and the staff member took turns to look after it every day. When it came to saving the cat, many of the people that Xiaogua had brought with him were pulled over to help save the cat. Although most of them were veterinarians, they were more reliable than the young and inexperienced volunteers. They could really help with changing the medicine, simple treatment, and care. Except for major operations, they could really help with everything else. And this kitten was sent to the place where Xiaogua and the others were resting by a volunteer. The cat was rescued by a search dog called Zai Zai. After Zai Zai picked up the kitten was immediately transferred to the hands of the volunteers. After all, the search and rescue dog still had a lot of work to do. As for how to deal with the kitten, not many people cared. Human life was the most important thing. The volunteers didn't know what to do. The kitten's 2 forelimbs were so badly injured that it looked like it was going to be crippled. They didn't know how the cat survived. The volunteers brought the kitten back and were scolded by the team leader. If they couldn't save the person, who would save the cat? Moreover, although some of them studied medicine, they weren't veterinarians and didn't have much experience. They only did simple treatment. However, after knowing that Xiaogua and the others were there, they immediately sent the kitten over. One of Xiaogua's veterinarians performed an amputation operation for the kitten. Fortunately, there were still some veterinary drugs and tools. Although the conditions were far less than when it was in the pet center, and it was easy to get infected, that was all they could do. It was the kitten's luck to be able to survive. Speaking of which, there was actually no need for Zheng Tan's help. However, the kitten was also troubled after coming here because the kitten often meowed. Once it meowed, it caused a chain reaction. There was a cat here who also liked to meow, but it usually stopped meowing because the other cats didn't meow. It also meowed when it was filming an advertisement. It only got better after being beaten by Zheng Tan. Now the kitten was making more and more noise because of the kitten's meowing. Even the other cats here were anxious and couldn't be appeased. Charlie was wondering if cats also knew fear, and the fear was passed from the kitten to the other cats, leading to the current situation. He called Xiaogua to report, but Xiaogua didn't say much. He only asked Charlie to find Zheng Tan. They would stop meowing after he calmed them down. In fact, in the entire pet center, Zheng Tan wasn't the only one who could calm them down. There were also Li Yuanba and Peanut Candy. Li Yuanba? He had indeed calmed them down before, and the effect was good. This was also the reason why Xiaogua let Li Yuanba stay here. It was a pity that Li Yuanba didn't care about anyone now. He didn't even give face to Xiaogua. He stayed in Xiaogua's lounge all day long. Now he didn't even do the weekly routine physical examination. Previously, when Xiaogua wanted to take Li Yuanba to the physical examination room by force, he almost used force on Xiaogua. It was Xiaogua's wife, Li Yuanba's real owner, Yanzi, who came to calm him down. Originally, they were worried that Li Yuanba's age was coming, and he was beginning to age. However, after some observation, it didn't seem to be the case. Therefore, this matter was temporarily put aside. In addition, Yanzi had to take care of the children and couldn't run here every day. Xiaogua went to the disaster area, so the people in the studio didn't dare to do anything to Li Yuanba. Peanut candy? That would be even worse. Xiaogua had tried it before, but the peanut candy was so rude to them that the cat that was beaten up was startled for a month and lost a lot of weight. Since then, Xiaogua had stopped counting on the peanut candy to keep the cat in check. Therefore, there was the scene where Charlie called Jiao Pa and asked him to bring Zheng Tan over. Chapter 339. When Zheng Tan first met Li Yuanba, this guy was already pregnant with peanut candies. At that time, its owner, Swallow, had just found out that it was a female cat. Thinking of the possible situations, Zheng Tan decided that he shouldn't come to the pet center for the time being. Even if he was called over, he couldn't stay here for long, especially in Xiaogua's lounge. During this time, he absolutely couldn't go in. If Zheng Tan was right, Xiaogua would frame him for this matter, and it would be hard to explain himself unless he did a DNA test again. In the past, the Jiao Pa had done a DNA test for Zheng Tan. Considering that there was such a way to clarify himself, Zheng Tan wasn't too worried. At worst, he could ask the Jiao Pa to do it. As for whose baby it was, Zheng Tan thought of what he heard from Air Mao and Celestine when they went to Triumph 2 days before the 100-day celebration of Air Mao's daughter. Since March, Yihao would bring the Monseigneur with him when he came over. He didn't know if it was for safety reasons or for other reasons. If that was the case, this baby was probably the Monseigneur's baby again. He just didn't know what it would look like when it was born. Also, when did the Monseigneur and Li Yuanba meet? Did Yihao know? Shaking his head, he didn't continue to think about it. Now that the cats in the studio had settled down, Zheng Tan immediately went home with the Jiao Pa. Because the Jiao Pa didn't have much time. If something happened in the pet center, Charlie would come directly to pick up Zheng Tan. Every few days, when there was trouble in the studio, Charlie would come to pick up Zheng Tan. Although Charlie and the staff said that it was because of the kitten, Zheng Tan thought that Li Yuanba might also be involved. Perhaps, the Monseigneur had come quietly at some point. Zheng Tan was able to see how well the kitten had recovered after coming here a few more times. Just like what Charlie and the others had said, this kitten's vitality was too strong. Not only did it survive such a serious injury in the disaster, it was also in good spirits now. Although it had lost its forelimbs and jumped like a kangaroo when it walked, as long as it had vitality, it was a good sign. When Xiaogua was free, he told Charlie and the others to take good care of the kitten. When the time came, they would make a special topic for the kitten. Not only could they collect more donations, but it would also be good for the reputation of the Green Wings Association and the pet center. The donations would be donated to the disaster area where the kitten was found. The donations would be used for the livelihood of the victims and the reconstruction of the disaster area. As for the kitten's name, it was given by Xiaogua, Paparazzi. It was hard to imagine that a cat had a dog's name. Later, when Zheng Tan heard Charlie and the others' discussion, he knew why Xiaogua had named the kitten. The search and rescue dog that saved the kitten was named Zai Zai. It was said that it came from a search and rescue dog family. Its father was a search and rescue dog with a lot of honors. Its name was King. The original name of Zai Zai was not Zai Zai, but Keizai, using the first letters of its father's name. Later, because the word Keizai involved some sensitive and prohibited things, it was changed to the current Zai Zai. The reason why Xiaogua gave the cat this name was that the cat was saved by a dog, and the dog's name was Zai Zai, so it was directly named Paparazzi. As for the name, it was fine as long as it was called. Listen, Paparazzi was so easy to say. Besides, even Swallow could name her cat Li Yuanba, so it was not that strange to name this cat Paparazzi. Even if the cats in the studio sometimes threw tantrums, they were relatively good-natured, and were not very aggressive. They treated Paparazzi peacefully, and a few cats often licked Paparazzi's fur. A new special area was opened on the Pet Center's official website. It was about paparazzi. From the time after the operation to the current situation, there was a description of the situation. Because of paparazzi, many cat friends donated some money again, and some even came to the Pet Center to see it in person. From the day of the earthquake, the rest of May, until the whole of June, the heavy feeling had not subsided. Ajin and the others had gone to the disaster area. Now some celebrities had also gone there. Whether it was a show or if they were sincere, as long as they could help the disaster victims and the reconstruction of the disaster area, it would be fine. Xiaogua returned in mid-June. On the second day of his return, before he could recover from the emotions accumulated in the disaster area, Li Yuanba was born. Early in the morning, Xiaogua finished breakfast and walked into the lounge with a cup of tea. When he saw the situation on the sofa, he almost threw the cup out of his hand. Swallow heard the news and came over, full of guilt. She had been very busy for more than 2 months, especially in the past month, taking care of the children and worrying about Xiaogua. Although she had heard that Li Yuanba was a little strange before, she did not think in that direction, and did not take care of it. Now that she knew the real reason for Li Yuanba's abnormality, she was distressed and kept asking if Li Yuanba had been hungry during this time. Xiaogua was also afraid that nutrition problems would affect the cats' bodies, but Li Yuanba did not cooperate with the inspection. It did not allow anyone except Xiaogua and Swallow to enter the door at all. Whenever someone entered the door, Li Yuanba would roar, and its eyes would make people's hair stand on end. Because Li Yuanba was much more low-key now, many people had forgotten that this cat was actually very fierce in the past. However, Xiaogua soon found that he and Swallow seemed to have worried for nothing. Some of the food he put in the lounge, and some of the food reserves in the studio, were missing. According to Charlie, the diced chicken in the fridge was missing from time to time, but they did not care at that time. Now it seemed that it had probably gone directly into Li Yuanba's stomach. Li Yuanba usually did not do things like rummaging, and no one knew that it had this ability. Maybe it did this kind of thing secretly, but it was not discovered. In the past, Zhengtan also learned a few tricks from it to climb over the window. It could be seen that this hidden cat was actually very capable. Zhengtan only knew about Li Yuanba's kittens on the day the studio started work. However, Xiaogua kept it a secret. Except for the people in the studio, some people in the pet store and clinic did not know about Li Yuanba's kittens. The people in the studio should have also been told by Xiaogua, so they did not disclose the news. This made Zhengtan very confused. What kind of kittens were born that made Xiaogua keep it a secret? Looking at Xiaogua, who was sitting next to the camera, but his mind was not in the studio at all, Zhengtan's curiosity in his heart deepened. At this moment, several people in the studio who had seen the kittens, including Charlie, were also wondering who the kittens were. They could not see any other characteristics of the kittens now. They had to wait until it grew up. As for the color of its fur, thinking about the color of the kitten's fur, he glanced around the cats in the studio, but still had no clue. The proprietress, Swallow, said that it might not be a cat from the pet center. If it had that kind of inclination, it would not have waited until now. Li Yuanba also did not like those cats. Although cats may not talk about relationships like people, it was also true that there was only one peanut candy after a few years. Besides, there were quite a lot of male cats in the pet center, so the possibility of it being a cat was smaller. Finally, Charlie's eyes fell on Zhengtan, which made Zhengtan's beard tremble. F***ck, he was suspected again. However, Charlie thought of peanut candy. That was not right. Peanut candy had long hair, and its body shape did not match with Zhengtan's. If this kitten also had long hair and was big enough, tapping his forehead, Charlie thought about the long-haired cats around, especially the forest cats, but still could not think of anything. When it was almost noon, Swallow came over with a lunchbox, which contained the cat food she had made for Li Yuanba. Xiaogua did not stay in the studio, and went to the lounge with Swallow. Zhengtan took the opportunity to quickly follow them, wanting to see what the kittens looked like. Charlie and several other staff members who were eating lunch stretched their necks. They were not allowed to go close to the kittens. Peanut candy had not gone out to cause trouble for the past few days. It squatted not far from the lounge and looked over there. From time to time, it would go to the door and sniff the gap. It was not sure if it had realized that its brother or sister was inside. When other people came over, it would help Li Yuanba chase them away. Zhengtan was still an exception. When Peanut Candy saw Zhengtan, it did not show any intention of attacking him like it did when it saw other people or cats. As usual, it walked in front of Zhengtan and rubbed against him, just like when Li Yuanba took it out for a walk. When Xiaogua and Swallow saw this, they originally planned to persuade Zhengtan to leave, but now they did not say anything. They also wanted to see if Li Yuanba would chase Zhengtan out. After the door opened, Peanut Candy stuck its head out and squeezed in with Zhengtan, but it did not get close. It squatted by the door, stretched its neck, and looked curiously at the sofa. Zheng Tan walked in a few steps. Li Yuanba let out a warning sound, but it was only a warning sound. It did not show any strong vigilance or attack like it did when it saw other people. After stopping, Zheng Tan jumped onto a chair and stood up slightly to look at the sofa. The sofa had been surrounded by xiaogua to prevent the kittens from falling out. The floor around the sofa was also covered with a thick blanket, just in case. The sofa cushions used by Li Yuanba were padded with cushions and other things. It was convenient for Li Yuanba to change and get used to it faster. At this moment, Li Yuanba was lying on its side on the sofa. In its stomach there was a suspicious ball. What was that? Dragon fruit? Jiao Ma had bought some dragon fruit in the past 2 days, so when Zheng Tan looked at the ball, he thought of the flesh of the dragon fruit. Of course, the spots on the ball were not as dense as the black seeds in the white flesh of the dragon fruit that Jiao Ma had bought. Speaking of which, the fur pattern was most similar to that of the Dalmatian dog. Yes, the kitten in Li Yuanba's arms at this moment was very similar to that of a Dalmatian. Zheng Tan had seen many black and white cats, but it was the first time he had seen one with black spots like this. If it had yellow fur, it could be said that it looked like a leopard, but this one had white fur, so it was only black and white. It was all Xiaogua's fault for keeping the news a secret. He was afraid that some curious people would come over and disturb Li Yuanba. There were many rich and powerful people among Xiaogua's cat friends. Unfortunately, Xiaogua didn't sell the cat. If they were curious and insisted on coming over, Xiaogua's refusal would definitely offend them. Moreover, Yanzi had said that the cat wasn't for sale, and that he would raise it himself, so Xiaogua decided to keep the news a secret. Just like the situation with peanut candy, Li Yuanba only gave birth to one kitten. This kitten was bigger than the average kitten. Yanzi and Xiaogua were discussing what to name the cat. Chapter 340. Maybe it was because Li Yuanba was too lazy to move, or maybe it had changed its way of educating children, or maybe it knew that this kitten's fur color could easily attract trouble. Anyway, Li Yuanba didn't take little Sesame everywhere. Back then, Li Yuanba used to carry peanut candy everywhere. Now Li Yuanba basically only stayed in Xiaogua's lounge and didn't run around. But little Sesame was different. Just like peanut candy back then, little Sesame grew very fast. It was obviously bigger than other cats of the same age, and this trend became more and more obvious as it grew. When it was a month old, this little guy showed its restless side. It ran around and was full of energy. Together with Paparazzi, they were the 2 most active cats in the studio this summer. Even peanut candy couldn't compare to them. Now Xiaogua put a cat tree in the lounge. Sometimes Li Yuanba was annoyed by little Sesame, so it would jump to the top of the cat tree. Sometimes it would lie on the sofa, but the sofa was too low. Even if little Sesame couldn't climb up, it would still tease around. There was also a cat bed near the floor of the cat tree. That was where little Sesame slept. Sometimes Li Yuanba also slept there. Because of the mother and son in the lounge, Xiaogua also changed the resting place. Otherwise, it would be impossible to rest peacefully here. Little Sesame was too restless. At the end of July, Zheng Tan was picked up by Charlie and brought to the pet center. Today was a routine working day. The temperature had already soared to 38 degrees Celsius. Outside, especially on the streets, the temperature was even higher. Car exhaust and air conditioning emissions made the temperature of the whole city jump a few more degrees. However, no matter how hot it was, it still had to work. Fortunately, there was air conditioning in the pet center, so Zheng Tan didn't have to worry about fainting from the heat. Speaking of which, the body temperature of cats was higher than that of humans. Relatively speaking, most cats were more resistant to heat. Among the cats in the studio, there were a few that liked to soak in baths. At this time, they were even happier. When other cats saw the water, they ran over happily. It was said that Sesame was also a cat that liked to soak in baths. One day, this little guy flipped into a basin of water. When a staff member went over to wash his face, he found a cat floating in the basin. The unique spotted fur color showed that this was the cat that the boss and lady boss treasured. At that time, the staff member was so scared that his face turned pale. After all, the basin was placed there. If this cat drowned in the basin, he didn't know how to explain it. He reached out his hand. Little Sesame raised his hand, and pushed the staff member's hand. Little Sesame raised its head impatiently, then it moved its hand a few times in the basin, and continued to float in the basin. It was only a 1-month-old cat, and its immune system was weak. It had to pay special attention to bathing, let alone cold water. After Xiaogua heard what the staff member said, he immediately carried Little Sesame over to dry its fur and check its body. However, he found that this little guy was very healthy. For the next few days, there was no problem at all. It also liked to run to places with water every time. Peanut Candy and Li Yuanba also let it be and didn't care at all. There was no other way. Xiaogua had to pay attention to this restless little guy again. Today, when Zheng Tan entered the studio, he found that the atmosphere was not right. Today he didn't find the guy with spots all over his body. Only the paparazzi was filming at the shooting site. As for the other cats, they all looked like they were not in the right state. They looked like they were on guard, or they looked like they were afraid. There was even one that was still hiding in its nest. No matter how the person in charge of taking care of it comforted it, it wouldn't come out. After working together for so long, with Zheng Tan's understanding of it, if this cat wasn't frightened, it wouldn't be acting like this. Sniffing the smell in the room, Zheng Tan was surprised. That guy was actually here. Jumping onto the table by the window, Zheng Tan looked outside. There were 2 inconspicuous cars. When he came in from outside, he didn't notice them. Now that he looked carefully, he seemed to have seen the drivers in the cars before. Was it Master Tang the 7th or Yi Hao's driver? It seemed that someone had brought the Monsignor here to see his wife and children. No wonder the cats in the studio were not in the right state. Even the good-tempered dogs looked like they were facing a great enemy. In contrast, the paparazzi was much more special. It was as if he didn't notice at all. When he was first rescued from the disaster area, the paparazzi was about 2 months old. Now at the end of July, the paparazzi was 4 months old. Compared to when he was first sent over, he no longer looked weak and pitiful. He was much stronger. The 2 front legs that were amputated were only left with a short section. Usually he spent a lot of time standing. In the beginning, he only jumped. When he jumped, he was like a kangaroo. Later, he slowly tried to walk with his 2 hind legs. The people in the pet center were always paying attention to the paparazzi's physical condition. The food was specially prepared. Apart from everyone's efforts, the paparazzi himself was indeed strong enough to recover to his current state. Usually, when the other cats ignored him, he would play with Sesame, running around the studio, or find the good-tempered dogs in the studio who often participated in the shooting. Sometimes he would even lie down and sleep. Perhaps because he couldn't jump to high places like the other cats, and because he was saved by the dogs, the paparazzi spent more time with the dogs. The staff would also tease him sometimes. Cats that had experienced great disasters would either become more timid and would be frightened by the slightest movement, or they would become like the paparazzi now, with an especially strong resistance to pressure. Many cats in the pet center were not in their best condition because of the arrival of the Monsignor. They had been maintaining a sense of vigilance and fear, and wished that they could hide in their nests and not come out. However, the paparazzi was not like that. Even if this guy only had 2 legs, he was still jumping around happily as usual. This was what Xiaogua and the people in the studio were happy to see. No matter how you looked at it, a cat that was full of vitality in this state could have a positive effect if it was filmed into a video. Now society needed some positive energy. Because the other cats weren't doing their best today, Xiaogua let the people in the studio film the paparazzi first, and let Zheng Tan cooperate. They couldn't count on the other cats. With the addition of Zheng Tan, the paparazzi, who didn't know how to cooperate, made fewer mistakes. Most of the time, it was Zheng Tan who guided his actions. This also made the staff feel relieved. After all, even if the paparazzi was full of energy, he was still a small cat, and a disabled one at that. If he was tired, they would feel bad. After the filming, Zheng Tan thought that he hadn't seen the Monsignor for a long time, and decided to go over and see if the Monsignor had changed. Following the smell and hearing the small sounds coming from the room, Zheng Tan came to the door, looked at the door lock, and jumped up to open it. The door was not locked. After opening it, Zheng Tan stuck his head in. There were 4 people standing in the room. Xiaoguo, Swallow, Master Tang the Seventh, and a person who followed Master Tang the Seventh. The four cats, Monseigneur, Li Yuanba, Peanut Candy and Sesame. The Monseigneur was still the same. 4 years had passed, and he still looked the same as he did 4 years ago. Many people said that when cats were kept in captivity, they would lose some of their original wildness, just like the cats in the pet center, who were relatively good-tempered. The Monseigneur had been with Yi Hao and Master Tang the Seventh for 4 years, but his murderous nature had not disappeared. Zheng Tan could feel that he could kill people in the past, and he could do the same now. Perhaps he had already killed again. After all, he was with Yi Hao and Master Tang the Seventh now, and it was possible that he would encounter a dangerous situation again. However, whether or not he was a ferocious cat, the Monseigneur treated Li Yuanba, Peanut Candy, and Sesame quite well. He lay next to Li Yuanba, and Peanut Candy and Sesame surrounded him, biting and scratching his paws. Xiaoguo sat with Master Tang the Seventh, and told him about the 3 cats. Master Tang the Seventh sat on the sofa with a smile, leaning on his crutches, and listened. When he saw Zheng Tan, Master Tang the Seventh even greeted him. He knew Zheng Tan. As for Li Yuanba and the others in the pet center, Zheng Tan guessed that Master Tang the Seventh had probably investigated the Monseigneur when he kept him by his side back then. Perhaps Master Tang the Seventh had allowed the Monseigneur to come here many times in the past 2 years. However, just like what Jiao Pa had said, the Monseigneur's bloodline and origin were destined to be different from ordinary cats. At the same time, it also led to a low fertility rate. In the past few years, Li Yuanba had given birth to 2 cats, but both of them were premium. Peanut Candy, needless to say, was very strong. Just ask the cat owners in the area, and you would know how strong she was. She had expanded her range of challenges, and her reputation for daring to fight with dogs was very well known. As for Sesame, who was still in its infancy, its body was also very strong, and its spirit was not bad. It even had a unique fur color. As the saying goes, quality is more important than quantity. This was the case. Master Tang the Seventh once again mentioned the matter of buying Sesame, but Xiaoguo politely rejected it. Master Tang the Seventh was not angry. He just said that if it worked, they could get another one. If it didn't work, then forget it. It didn't matter. Having one cat like this was enough. Any more and it would be easy for accidents to happen, and it would be difficult to control. Since they were having a reunion, Zheng Tan did not go over to join in the fun. Just as he was about to walk out, Xiaoguo stopped him. "Black Charcoal, come over here for a moment." As Xiaoguo spoke, he walked out and brought Zheng Tan to another room. That was his resting room now. In the past few years, Xiaoguo was used to speaking directly to Zheng Tan. He did not treat Zheng Tan as an ordinary cat. "Director Yang gave me a call last week. It's Director Yang Yi from Yixing Culture. You know him. He said that the documentary is already out, and it will be broadcasted on CCTV this week. At the same time, they are also planning to make this documentary into a series. The second part will be filmed in Pearl City. He was thinking that if there's a need, he might need your help." That documentary is out? Speaking of which, Zheng Tan thought quite highly of that documentary. Although it was just a documentary and could not be shown in prime time or on the big screen, it was the first documentary that Zheng Tan had participated in. It was not a pet advertisement or a pet promotional video. It was an official, formal documentary. He had put in a lot of effort, and even his makeup and hair had dried. He just did not know what kind of response the documentary would have, and what the reviews would be. "I'm thinking that the person surnamed Yang is probably still thinking about you. His company seems to be investing in a few documentaries that involve animals. If the response to this documentary is good, he might ask you to film other documentaries. Well, the ones on the big screen." After a pause, Xiaoguo was afraid that Zheng Tan would lose his temper, so he added, "Of course, the most important thing is still your mood. I won't interfere with what you and your cat father decide to do. The salary of those documentaries is at most 100,000 yuan. But the person surnamed Yang owns a big company, so we have to be tactful in rejecting him. Don't make a fuss. If one day you are as successful as Crystal, that Capuchin monkey, then it will be a different story. You can do whatever you want, and we will have to suck up to you." Xiaoguo laughed. Chapter 341. Monseigneur stayed in the pet center for a day, and then left with Mr. Tang VII. However, Mr. Tang VII seemed to have reached some kind of agreement with Xiaoguo. Zheng Tan had a feeling that he would probably see Monseigneur more often in the pet center in the future. At least, it would not be as rare as before. Peanut Candy and Sesame still stayed in the pet center with Li Yuanba. They lived a good life here, mainly because Li Yuanba was here. Peanut Candy had already gotten used to the life here. As for Sesame, it was still young, so Xiaoguo and Yinzi were reluctant to give it away. Zheng Tan had secretly looked up the Capuchin monkey Crystal, mentioned by Xiaoguo on the internet when he was alone at home. He knew that this guy was a comedy star with a high salary and was very rich. No matter whether it was in TV series or on the big screen, this guy could be seen everywhere. Some of the cats from Xiaoguo's studio had also appeared on the big screen, but they had only appeared for a few seconds or no more than 2 or 3 minutes, which was different from the real animal celebrities. Of course, Zheng Tan did not want to compete with the animal stars. Different countries had different social rules and animal welfare. Besides, Zheng Tan himself was a special case. It was impossible for him to compete with the animal stars. Jiaopa had said that he had to keep a low profile. Therefore, although Zheng Tan was interested in the big screen that Xiaoguo was fascinated by, he did not think too much about it. After all, everyone had their own way of living. As for competing with Crystal on the same stage, this difficult task would be left to Chi Dada's macaque monkey. After all, they were both monkeys, and they both walked the same path. On the day of the broadcast of the documentary, the Jiao family who had heard the news sat in the living room at night. No one went out. Jiaopa did not go to the yard either. The family of 4 people and 1 cat all stared at the screen. Zheng Tan looked at the 4 people who were staring at the screen, and did not show any impatience. Suddenly, he had some thoughts. It was just a documentary, but the whole family was already waiting in front of the TV. Jiaopa even cancelled a meeting that night. Even though the Jiaopa had told Zheng Tan to keep a low profile, at this moment, the 4 members of the Jiao family couldn't contain their excitement and pride. Would the 4 members of the Jiao family be even more excited if it was a TV series or a movie on the big screen? After all, in most cases, documentaries did not have as much influence on the public as TV series and movies. What Zheng Tan filmed in Xiaoguo's studio could only be considered a small fuss to please some online viewers. Should he develop it further? While Zheng Tan was thinking, Jiao Yuan said excitedly, "It's starting! It's starting!" Zheng Tan raised his head and looked at the TV. The title of the documentary was displayed, City People Cats. There was also a subtitle at the end of the article, Capital Cat Affair. Looking at the title, it was obvious that Yang Yi had been wanting to make a series for a long time. This was the capital episode. The next one was the Pearl episode. Who knew which city would be next? Was Yang Yi going to film all the major cities in the country? Probably not. The documentary wasn't long. The commercials didn't even add up to an hour. When Zheng Tan was in the shot, the Jiao family was very excited. Even though Zheng Tan's fur was dyed, to the Jiao family, black charcoal was still black charcoal. The 4 of them even commented on Zheng Tan's role and acting in the film. Of course, the other cats also discussed it, including Big Amy and other cats. From the old capital city to the modern skyscrapers of the capital city, the different sceneries, the people who lived there, and the lively figures who were active in various places were presented on the screen one by one. Domesticated, homeless, living in luxurious mansions, squatting in alleyways, noble, country bumpkin, serious, crazy. But no matter what kind of cat, Yang Yi wanted to show the aura and ruffian spirit that belonged to the cats of the capital. In the beginning, to Zheng Tan, the cats there weren't anything special. But after editing the film, it gave off a completely different feeling. No wonder people said that it was different when you were on the screen. Zheng Tan looked at himself on the screen and felt that he had become artistic. Different stories, different scenes, accompanied by different music, the audience reminisced along with the documentary. Some people reminisced about the old alley of Hutong. Some reminisced about the blurry little figure in their memories that could only be seen in some old photos. And some reminisced about the people and things that had once lived there and were related to it. When he first participated in the filming, he didn't think much of it. But when it was actually produced, Zheng Tan found that the film was very moving and resonated with many people. In the few memory scenes that Zheng Tan participated in, there were photos of the cats that Yang Yi's grandfather took when he was alive. Each photo recorded the city of that era, the people of that era, and the cats that were active in that era. At the end of the film, there was a quote from an editor of Pet Word magazine. "We may live in different cities, see different sceneries, live different lives, pass different strangers every day, and open the door with different feelings, but what greets us is the same kind of happiness. When you hug the cat's warm body and quietly observe the city, do you know how many stories here are related to cats? Do you know what is happening in other cities? Do we fall in love with this city because of the cats? Or do we have cats because of this city?" After watching, Jiao Pa went to search the official website of the film. Since he planned to make it into a series, Yang Yi also created an official website. There were some new promotional videos that had already been edited. They were some clips that were currently being filmed in Pearl City. How was this planning to film? They had clearly started work a long time ago. It was even possible that the filming was almost done. Zheng Tan thought that if he really wanted to participate in the film, there would be someone who came to talk to Jiao Pa about it. It seemed that Zheng Tan might not be needed for the next few series. There were quite a lot of people who posted on the official forum. Most of the people who resonated with the Beijing chapter had lived in the old capital, or were currently living in the capital. With the Beijing chapter as a precedent, some people in Pearl City were also looking forward to the filming of the Pearl City chapter. 10 miles of the ocean, the pearl of a century. Some people compared the cats of Pearl City to the pretty girls of a humble family who had walked out of the village. They were a little beautiful and enchanting. They were leisurely and relaxed, making people unconsciously moved. In the flickering lights and passing shadows that made people unable to stop themselves, the cats here were like the beauties of that era. In the depths of the mortal world, in the old dreams of the old Pearl City, they appeared and disappeared, but never left. Looking at the meaning of the promotional video, it was going to replay decades of the past. The beauties of that era brought their cats to reenact those glorious and lonely old dreams. Maybe the characteristics lived in the era. Or maybe it was just the presentation method and focus of the film. The cats of each city would integrate the characteristics of different eras in that city. It was exaggerated art, but it was quite comfortable to watch. It was just that he didn't know when the film would be filmed in Chuhua City. In terms of historical significance, Chuhua City was also an old city. However, strictly speaking, Zheng Tan wasn't a native of Chuhua City. If the film was really filmed here, would Zheng Tan participate in it? He would talk about it when the time came. It was still too early to talk about it. In the next few days, when Zheng Tan was alone at home, he would specifically go to the film review and related areas of the major forums. Most of the reviews of the documentary were very good. In some pet forums, in the pet cat section, the documentary was promoted again and again. Every time he saw someone promote the documentary, Zheng Tan couldn't help but be happy. Although no one could recognize him, it couldn't stop Zheng Tan's good mood from seeing the good reviews. In the forum, there was a post called 10 Expressions of the Cats in the Documentary. Out of the 10, Zheng Tan occupied 3, Dammy occupied 1, Xiaomi another, and the other 5 were other cats. However, the first cat wasn't Zheng Tan but Dammy. The scene of Dammy squatting on the wall and laughing down below was forwarded by many people, with different funny subtitles attached. In some chat software, netizens cut that scene and made it into a GIF and posted it everywhere. Thus, Dammy became popular on the internet. Far away in Beijing, Fang Xiaokong sat in his office and flipped through the posts about Dammy and laughed for a long time. Just when Zheng Tan thought that Yang Yi was using all his energy to film the documentary series, the Jiao Pa received a call from Yang Yi. Yang Yi said that there was a film that he wanted Zheng Tan to act in. The Jiao Pa didn't reject him directly. He went home and asked Zheng Tan for his opinion. During this period of time, Zheng Tan had been thinking if he had the chance to act in a film. He didn't want to be the main lead. Just a minor supporting role would be enough. Appearing for 5 minutes would be enough. Even a cameo would be fine. When the time came, the Jiao family would definitely go to the cinema to watch it. Now that he heard the Jiao Pa's words and deduced from Yang Yi's words, it was a relatively important role. Act. Why not act? If he could get paid and appear on the big screen, he wouldn't be a cat in vain. As for the low profile that the Jiaopa mentioned, as long as he hid his identity, he could sign an agreement with Yang Yi. However, it was another film about cats. Was Yang Yi going against cats? A week later, on the weekend, Yang Yi brought his classmate and came straight to his door. Because he had called in advance, the Jiaopa was waiting at home. The person that Yang Yi brought over was his high school classmate. He was now a director called Kong Han. He looked like a good person. The film that Yang Yi told the Jiaopa about was the one that Kong Han was going to direct. However, this film was a little special. Therefore, when Yang Yi saw the script, the first person that came to mind was Zheng Tan, who he had worked with before. Kong Han originally didn't decide to act in this film. If he did, it would probably take a lot of effort and trouble because it involved animals. The final result might not be as good as he wanted. However, after Yang Yi saw it, he told him that there was someone who might be able to help. Therefore, the two of them were sitting here now. Kong Han looked at the black cat lying on the sofa. It seemed to be looking at him too. Its gaze was just like a human's. It was just 2F** king fitting of the image in his mind. Zheng Tan felt that the young director's gaze was a little strange. However, after listening to Yang Yi's conversation with the Jiaopa, it seemed that when he was talking to Xiao Guo on the phone, he wasn't talking about the documentary. Instead, he was talking about another film that their company had invested in. Yang Yi was no longer with the documentary crew. "Oh right, the script you mentioned on the phone, what's it about?" When the Jiaopa picked up the phone, the surroundings were a little noisy. Moreover, Yang Yi's words were vague, so he didn't hear what it was about. Yang Yi didn't say anything. He looked at Kong Han and let him, who knew the script better, speak. Kong Han smiled and said, "It's not complicated. It's about a man who suddenly turns into a cat." Zheng Tan. Chapter 342. Upon hearing Kong Han's words, Zheng Tan's body stiffened. "Damn it, I'm breaking out in cold sweat. I suddenly feel very guilty." Zheng Tan turned his head to look in another direction, and stopped looking at Kong Han. However, his ears were still perked up, for fear that he would miss the latter part of Kong Han's words. "Professor Jiao, your cat can be considered as half of the main character of this film," Kong Han said with a smile. Usually the term main character was very attractive to actors. As for why it was considered half of the main character, it had something to do with the plot. "Can you be more specific?" the Jiaopa asked. If he could let his cat act as the main character, he wouldn't mind playing a supporting role. However, half of the main character sounded quite important. As I said just now, the plot is about a grown man waking up to find that he has turned into a cat. Kong Han explained unhurriedly. Upon hearing this, Zheng Tan was speechless. Waking up from a sleep? Did no one really find out about my past? Fortunately, when Kong Han continued, Zheng Tan discovered that the main character in the script was a white-collar worker, and not a university student. Turning into a cat also didn't mean that he would return to the past. Furthermore, his cat form and human form would alternate. In other words, the main character would sometimes turn into a cat, and sometimes remain human. Zheng Tan heaved a sigh of relief because the script was different from Zheng Tan's situation. However, to a certain extent, Zheng Tan could be considered to be acting as himself in this film. Other than Zheng Tan, no other cat could act as well as Zheng Tan. After hearing Kong Han's brief explanation, the Jiaopa nodded in agreement. He could roughly guess what was going on, but he still waited quietly for Kong Han to continue. "The male lead in the film has turned into a cat. Hence, Professor Jiao, your cat and the popular young actor Shi Xiaotian have shared the lead roles. However, strictly speaking, your cat has more scenes than Shi Xiaotian." Zheng Tan had heard of Shi Xiaotian before. Many of the girls in Little Pomelo's school were die-hard fans of Shi Xiaotian. Shi Xiaotian was also one of the people who stood out after Gong Zizhao's incident. Zheng Tan didn't know what Shi Xiaotian's personality was like for the time being. "Where's the female lead?" "Oh sorry, I'm just asking. If it's not convenient, you don't have to tell me," Jiaopa said. "That's fine. The female lead has already been decided. Have you heard of Wei Wen? I've acted in a palace drama and an idol drama." Kong Han didn't try to hide too much. There weren't many actors that had been confirmed, and there were still a lot of variables. However, Yang Yi said that he would try his best to answer Professor Jiao's questions. After all, it was rare to find such a cat, and Professor Jiao didn't seem like a chatterbox. Wei Wen, that girl was not bad. She had a good face and a good figure. She was the object of many people's fantasies. However, Zheng Tan remembered that Wei Wen would only become popular in another 2 years. As for now, she was not among the celebrities who were bursting with popularity. Could it be that the upcoming movie wasn't good or popular? Zheng Tan shook his head. Everything was unknown. He hadn't heard of such a movie back then. Jiao Pa wasn't a fan of celebrities and hence, he didn't have much of an impression of Wei Wen and Shi Xiaotian. He made a mental note of their names and planned to check up on them later. After all, his cat was going to be filming with those people, and the personalities of those people would affect his cat's treatment. Although he had never acted before, he had heard of all sorts of underhanded means on set. If he wasn't careful enough, he might even get backstabbed. His cat wasn't human. Even if it was wronged, it wouldn't voice it out. Kong Han and Yang Yi chatted with Jiao Pa for a while. They heaved a sigh of relief after Professor Jiao Pa nodded. They then took out the contract that they had drafted beforehand and showed it to Jiao Pa. In the past few years, they had signed plenty of contracts because of Zheng Tan. Hence, Jiao Pa had also gained some experience. Hence, he carefully read the terms and conditions of the contract. There weren't any traps in the contract either. Just like what Yang Yi had said over the phone, Jiao Pa wouldn't let his cat suffer any losses. There's nothing wrong with the contract, but Jiao Pa didn't sign it immediately after reading it. Instead, he looked at Yang Yi and said, "I hope you can add another clause or sign a supplementary agreement." Yang Yi nodded and gestured for Jiao Pa to continue. As long as the supplementary agreement wasn't too overboard, everything would be fine. The supplementary agreement that Jiao Pa had proposed was actually a confidentiality agreement regarding Zheng Tan. Just like before, even though Father Jiao had agreed to let Zheng Tan play the role, he knew some business tricks. If his cat really became popular, there would be benefits, but there would be more trouble. However, it was impossible to prevent Zheng Tan from really hiding his identity. If he couldn't use his real name, then he would use a fake name. To put it mildly, it was called a stage name. Zheng Tan's stage name was Black Sea, or BC for short. This name was already quite famous in certain circles on the internet. However, if he were to use it, Yang Yi and the others wouldn't even need to hype it up. The internet would be able to dig it up, and it would still attract more attention. It was said that celebrities wore glasses and masks when they went out on the streets. Would Jiao Pa have to worry about his cat being surrounded when he went out for a walk? Even if the movie didn't become popular, Jiao Pa still didn't want to take the risk. Hence, some things had to be prepared in advance. Changing his name again? After listening to Jiao Pa's explanation, Yang Yi didn't understand why this family had such an attitude when everyone else wanted to be famous. Keeping a low profile? Why? Yang Yi could say with certainty that as long as the publicity was good and the right operations were done properly, this cat would definitely become popular. Its value might not be comparable to that of the best actors and actresses, but it might be comparable to that of a small celebrity. After all, there weren't any famous animal celebrities in the country. Even the monkey named Big Brother Chi, who was active in the TV series recently, couldn't compare. However, on the other hand, this family was really good to the cat. This was also for the cat's sake. Of course, no matter what Yang Yi thought, the supplementary agreement still had to be signed. This agreement wasn't too much. Even some celebrities had changed their stage names a few times. As long as the cat could understand it, it would be fine. It would be troublesome if it didn't understand when they arrived at the set. After thinking it through, Yang Yi nodded. Okay, Professor Jiao, what stage name do you think Black Charcoal will change to? Z. The letter Z and the letter T, said Jiao Pa as his finger drew the shape of 2 letters in the air. Z. Yang Yi and Kong Han were puzzled. Why did it sound like a simplified name? That's right, said Jiao Pa. He couldn't do anything about it. He wasn't the one who came up with the name. He had always been very democratic. ZT was the name Jiao Pa. After Jiao Pa said that he wanted to change his stage name, Zheng Tan directly typed it on the keyboard in front of Jiao Pa's computer. Jiao Pa even asked Zheng Tan what it meant. However, Zheng Tan pretended to be ignorant. Jiao didn't ask further, and just treated it as a random letter. After everything was settled, Kong Han and Yang Yi left. They rejected Jiao Ma's invitation to stay for dinner. They still had something to do at night, and there were a few people here who needed to go over to meet up. The 4 members of the Jiao family knew that Zheng Tan was going to act in a movie. However, Jiao Pa said that they should keep it to themselves and not spread it around. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo had dealt with similar situations many times. Naturally, they understood the meaning behind it. However, when they knew that their cat was going to act in a movie, the 2 children couldn't hold back their excitement. They often gathered together to discuss it. Jiao Ma sometimes joined in the discussion as well. It was obvious that they were looking forward to Zheng Tan's performance. This made Zheng Tan even more confident. The decision was right. Yang Yi said that the movie would start shooting in September. It was still early, but the 4 members of the Jiao family and the cat should take advantage of the summer vacation to gather together. When September came, they would probably be separated from Zheng Tan for a period of time. It would definitely be longer than last year's documentary. Since Zheng Tan had decided to make a movie, Xiaogua had to give him a heads up. Before Zheng Tan left Chuhua City, Xiaogua asked Zheng Tan to work overtime a few times. Of course, overtime pay was indispensable. Therefore, in August, Zheng Tan came to the pet center more frequently to work overtime. At the same time, Yang Yi's documentary gave Xiaogua an idea. Since Zheng Tan would be absent for a period of time, Xiaogua wanted to make a different documentary. Since Yang Yi had already made a regional documentary, Xiaogua wanted to make a documentary about the age of the cat. Xiaogua wanted to make a documentary about Tomcat. Tomcat's standard was that even though 7 or 8 years old was considered old in many people's eyes, there were still quite a few cats over 7 years old in the pet center's treatment records and some pet files. Therefore, Xiaogua changed the age limit of the documentary to 10 years old and above. Wasn't it a time to promote harmony and positive energy? This was not bad. He wanted to use documentary techniques to record some touching stories between humans and cats. Being able to live with humans for more than 10 years meant that the relationship between them must be quite deep. Xiaogua thought, I'm not as generous as Yang Yi. I don't have the same level of hardware and manpower. I can't make something too artistic, but I can go for nature's novelty. Close to life. Filming this documentary about Tomcat would take a long time. Even if Zheng Tan was absent, there would be something to attract customers and viewers. It would avoid the impact of rumors on the official website like last year when Zheng Tan was away filming a documentary. Xiaogua didn't want to be blocked at people's doorsteps again. Now, Xiaogua was preparing for the filming of Tomcat. First, he had to contact customers who had cats of the right age. If they refused to cooperate, Xiaogua wouldn't force them. Of course, most of the customers' families were very happy about this. However, there was a problem. Most of the customers contacted were from better families. These people often came to the pet center to have their cats checked. Xiaogua naturally knew about this. The pet center had detailed records, but there was little information about ordinary families. These families basically didn't bring their pets for injections. They probably hadn't even had their pets vaccinated, so there would be no treatment records. Xiaogua wouldn't know about this. He didn't want to choose all the customers from better families. The film had to be more down-to-earth and approachable. So one day after working overtime, Xiaogua casually mentioned this to Zheng Tan in the lounge when he was giving him overtime pay. He said that Zheng Tan often walked around, so he must know some old cats. Zheng Tan really did think about it. The child named Wang Xing often came to Chuhua University to pick up bottles. There were a lot of bottles in the summer, so the child's harvest seemed to be good. His family's cat fit the bill. Zheng Tan brought Xiaogua to the old neighborhood. Xiaogua followed Zheng Tan's line of sight and saw the cat lying on the second-floor windowsill. Wang Xing's family was easy to persuade. For them, they could pay for the filming and give free treatment to the cat. Why not? After the matter was settled, Zheng Tan brought his people to the set. They were still the same people who filmed the documentary last year. Charlie naturally continued to act as an assistant. Knowing that Zheng Tan was going to change his stage name to ZT, Xiaogua specially went to get a set of clothes. The hats and t-shirts that he gave to Zheng Tan's followers all had the letter Z on them. Chapter 343. Well, this is where you will be staying for the next 3 months, a receptionist said as he opened the door and led Zheng Tan and the others into the house. This person was sent by Yang Yi. Yang Yi had already arranged the accommodation. It was 3 rooms and a living room, enough for Zheng Tan and the people he brought over. Is there anything else you need? The man asked. Charlie looked around, especially the room arranged for Zheng Tan. As an assistant, Charlie had served Zheng Tan for a few years. He was very familiar with Zheng Tan's preferences. He could tell at a glance whether it was suitable or not. Obviously, Yang Yi still valued Zheng Tan very much. Charlie was very satisfied with the arrangement of the room. When arranging the rooms, Yang Yi had asked Charlie and Jiaopa naturally. There were some things that Zheng Tan disliked, such as food, certain smells, etc. The windowsills were also newly installed with protective nets to prevent accidents. Not for now, Charlie said with satisfaction. Well, if you need anything, just give me a call. The man exchanged contact information with Charlie and left after talking about the daily arrangements. He had to report to Yang Yi and arrange the follow-up matters. Even though he was very curious about the black cat, he still held back. As one of Yang Yi's confidants, he knew what to ask and what not to ask. It was okay to be curious, but you had to know your limits. This time, besides Charlie, there were 4 other people who came with Zheng Tan. Not all of them were here to serve Zheng Tan. Charlie was enough. They came at the request of Yang Yi and Kong Han. Some of them were working as lighting engineers in Xiaoguo's studio, and some were working as sound engineers. No matter what, they were experienced in shooting cats, so they knew which lights would affect the cat's mood during shooting, which sounds would interfere with the cat, and so on. They also studied cat calls. In Zheng Tan's view, a lot of them were superfluous. However, they were sent by Yang Yi and Kong Han, and by Xiaoguo's personal order. Zheng Tan didn't care too much. Anyway, he wasn't the one who paid the salary, so he didn't need to worry too much. Even though their current profession was pet photography, most of the people in Xiaoguo's studio had professional backgrounds and were very familiar with this industry. Now that the movie had not started shooting, the few of them were sitting on the sofa watching TV and discussing. Zheng Tan occupied a sofa chair and listened to their conversation. This city was close to the sea and was quite prosperous. It was said to be Kong Han's hometown. The choice of filming location was decided by the scriptwriter and director, Kong Han. Some time ago, someone had criticized the phenomenon of writer-director, saying that it would cause movies to have no depth and low creativity. In fact, this script wasn't considered innovative. Some comics and novels had similar plots, but Kong Han seemed to have his own obsession. Just like Yang Yi's documentary, they only needed an opportunity to pick up this obsession that had been suppressed in the bottom of their hearts. Rumor had it that Kong Han was also a cat keeper back then. He had been raising cats since he was a child. Another person with a story. Yang Yi had arranged for people from the 18th floor to the 20th floor of the residential area, so that they could see the sea. Zheng Tan and the rest were on the 20th floor, so they could see the sea from the window of the living room. Zheng Tan looked at the window next to him. The sky outside was bluer than Chuhua City. Obviously, the environment and air quality here was much better than Chuhua City. Charlie and the others were discussing what they knew. The actors for this movie had been roughly decided. When they were in the elevator just now, they had seen a guy who seemed to be an agent, and instinctively recognized him. Hey, do you guys think Wei Wen has arrived? A person about the same age as Charlie asked expectantly. When the few men gathered together, the first thing they discussed was naturally the women. Wei Wen, as the main lead, was naturally one of the main points of their discussion. Other than Wei Wen, they also discussed a few female supporting roles. I didn't see Wei Wen, but when I went to park the car, I saw a girl who could cause a commotion just by moving. The person who spoke even reached out his hand and gestured in front of his chest with a wretched expression. Is she also from the crew? The others asked with bright eyes. The person shook his head. She doesn't look like it. The others immediately became listless, but they quickly became excited and started to discuss the other actors. As they were talking, the doorbell rang. Charlie, who was closest to the door, looked through the peephole and gestured to the people on the sofa. The few of them looked at each other and moved quickly. There was no trace of the wretchedness they had when they were discussing the topic that was not suitable for children. They had no choice but to be cautious. If there was a problem, they would have to pack up and leave immediately. Before they came, Xiaogua had told them that the crew was not their working group, nor was it the group that made the documentary. There might be a lot of tricks involved. A cat could not guard against anything, so naturally, they would have to deal with it. It was not that they were malicious. The human heart was unpredictable, and it was always good to be cautious. No one wanted to build a ladder for others and harm their own interests. The person who came in was a woman who looked to be in her 20s. Women always made men less vigilant. The woman was wearing casual clothes and had shoulder-length black hair. Although she was not very beautiful, when she smiled, her eyes curved and she looked very likable. "Sorry to disturb you, I live downstairs. My surname is Yang Huaishi, from Yixing culture. May I ask if you are also from the crew of Black Cat?" The woman with the surname Yang introduced herself. She was the manager of the few actors downstairs, and she was just here to visit. She did not talk much. After chatting with Charlie and the others for a while, she put down the gifts and left. After closing the door, Charlie and the others started to discuss again. She brought gifts when she visited? It's high-end tea. She's probably here to find out the truth? She has the same surname as the big boss of Yixing culture. Probably not related. Why would she need to come here personally to find out? That's true. But it's better to be careful. I think someone downstairs wants to use our Black ZT to make a name for themselves. Zheng Tin only listened to Charlie and the others' discussion. The sofa was facing the window, so when Yang Huaishi came in, she did not see Zheng Tan due to the angle. Zheng Tan did not care about those people. He was thinking about what the Jiaopa had told him before leaving Chuhua City. When they were filming the documentary, the Jiaopa had said that they could not be too smart, and that they had to make mistakes. Filming a movie required a lot of technical skills. So Zheng Tan was thinking about how to make mistakes as natural as possible. Compared to Zheng Tan, who was leisurely thinking about how to make a mistake, the main actors and supporting actors were much more nervous. This was especially true for the newbies who had been selected this time. They were afraid that something might go wrong. A single mistake could ruin their good impression of the director and the big boss. Of course, being on good terms with the crew, especially the more important ones, was also very beneficial for the small actors. Otherwise, Yang Huaishi would not have come up to ask about the situation. While they were testing each other in the temporary residence, Yang Yi was chatting with Kong Han after listening to the report from his subordinates. Although Kong Han had not acted in many movies, the response was not bad. It was just that he was young and did not have a satisfactory reputation in the country. Kong Han liked to use newcomers. This time, the main lead of the film was not considered a real big shot. The so-called popular young actors were just a joke to many people in the industry. There were many who were short-lived, not to mention those who were famous on the path of idols. There were also a few important supporting roles that people had never heard of before. There were also a few who were newly signed. Of course, most of them were from Yixing culture. Yang Yi was rich. No one would say anything if he invested money to promote his own people. As for who he would promote, it would depend on their performance. There were no superstars in this movie. Yang Yi, the big boss of Yixing culture, was here to watch the filming. The actors and actresses of Yixing culture knew what this meant, so they were nervous. Kong Han and Yang Yi were both people with high standards. Kong Han felt that the computer special effects in the movie made up for the actors' inability to perform difficult or dangerous actions to a certain extent. However, they would never be able to perform the actors' unique and charming expressions. Many famous actors and actresses often relied on a smile, or a look to reach the realm of perfection, and leave a deep impression in people's hearts. Therefore, Kong Han always felt that it would be more effective to use a real cat in this movie, and not use computer special effects. As for Yang Yi, his focus was not on this movie. It was different from the documentary where he really put his heart and soul into it. This movie was just a channel for him to give his actors and actresses a chance to perform. Yixing culture couldn't compare to the big shots of the entertainment industry with some history. Therefore, Yang Yi wanted to create a superstar of Yixing culture. At the top of the pyramid of professional actors and actresses, there were very few superstars. There were many stars in the country, but the number of real movie stars was very small. Superstars who could bring investment trust and box office returns were few and far between. In the domestic movie market, there were very few real superstars who could attract audiences to the cinema. There were no more than 10 of them, male or female. Moreover, this was the overall lineup of the Chinese movie market formed by combining the resources of the three countries on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Other actors and actresses, although famous, could not guarantee box office returns. This included many names that the audience was familiar with. At the moment, the value of superstars was more reflected in the investment problem. When a movie had a truly luxurious cast, the investment problem was immediately solved. When a movie had a group of superstars, the future box office could be predicted. The investors would calmly invest a huge amount of money, not only to pay the actors and actresses, but also to use the scenes, special effects, equipment, and other aspects. Therefore, when a commercial film attempted to create some creative possibilities, it needed the protection of these big stars. For directors, this was often a very helpless reality. Kong Han was one of the few people in the circle of directors, but it was hard to say what would happen in the future. This was the rule of this commercial era. Only superstars could make Yixing culture rise to prominence in this industry. Once, when he was filming Cats in the City, Yang Yi wanted to make Zheng Tan into a superstar. Sometimes, as long as it was done well, animals could attract more box office returns than humans. Just because it did not happen now did not mean it would not happen in the future. Unfortunately, his wish did not come true. It could be seen from the reaction of the Jiao family during the documentary. This time, when they signed the contract for the movie, Yang Yi immediately dismissed the idea. "So, you want to see those seedlings perform?" Kong Han looked at the person across the table. Yang Yi laughed and said jokingly, "Actually, I'm more looking forward to seeing those seedlings perform with a cat. Don't think that cat will only follow the instructions." Chapter 344. Concealing one's weaknesses was a skill. While concealing one's weaknesses, one had to be able to conceal one's skills and not reveal one's true strength. This was what Zheng Tan had been pondering. When Zheng Tan had joined Xiaoguo's studio, he had heard a lot from the people in the working group. At that time, the people in the studio had said a lot of things in front of Zheng Tan. They even criticized him and pointed at him. They thought that Zheng Tan couldn't understand them, so they didn't care. Of course, they didn't dare to do that now. At that time, Zheng Tan had learned the difference between a field cat and the more attractive and expensive cat breeds. Sometimes, the more eye-catching cat breeds didn't even need to do anything in front of the camera to attract people's attention, while the more ordinary ones needed to do more. In front of the stage and behind the scenes, more things were always needed to make up for congenital deficiencies. Zheng Tan had learned to hide her weaknesses in front of the camera and present a better side of herself to the audience. That was what she had learned from filming her pets. Of course, concealing one's shortcomings and playing to one's strengths and avoiding one's weaknesses seemed to be a necessary skill for stars. How to smile, to what extent to smile, which side profile was better, and so on, were all clear in their hearts. Why did many runway models, especially those who had their own exclusive lighting design, try to build a good relationship with the lighting designer? Every model had their own strengths and weaknesses, and each face had its own characteristics. Different lighting effects could be presented as strengths or weaknesses. When walking on the runway, there were cameras all around. In order to capture a more perfect picture, besides makeup, lighting effects were also a very important factor. A suitable angle and eyes, plus the right lighting, could directly improve the effect of showing off. Showing off in front of the camera was a skill. Zheng Tan had been very skilled in using this skill after shooting advertisements for several years. There were many people with acting skills, and there were also animals with acting skills. As long as they were trained, they could fool people, such as the famous monkey Chi Dada. Acting skills? Indeed, it was more vivid than the other monkeys. Perhaps the other monkeys were trained to imitate human movements and expressions, but Chi Dada would integrate some of its own emotions into it. However, from Yang Yi's point of view, Zheng Tan was different. Yang Yi had already noticed this during the filming of the documentary. Perhaps it was because he was now used to picking celebrities, even if the person in front of the camera was just a cat. Yang Yi would not miss out on the small details. For example, Zheng Tan's small tricks in front of the camera. Sometimes it was hard to associate this cat with a mongrel cat. It looked like a mongrel cat, but it felt different from the mongrel cats that one usually saw. This was also the reason why Yang Yi valued Zheng Tan. Perhaps, Zheng Tan himself did not know that his little tricks had been discovered. Previously, it was not without reason to include Zheng Tan in the superstar development plan. What a pity! Yang Yi lay on the recliner and looked out of the window, thinking about the possibility of tricking the cat over. On the other side, Zheng Tan squatted and looked at the three people blocking the door expressionlessly. He didn't make a sound or move. He just looked at them. It's here, it's that look again. Charlie, who was blocking the door, looked conflicted. They had to be conflicted. If they took a step back, they would feel uneasy. If they didn't, they would feel pressured under such a gaze. Every time they saw that look, they would feel a chill down their backs. Not just Charlie, even the other two people felt that way. However, because they promised Bosqua to look after the cat, they didn't do anything. Thinking about the situation when Bosqua went crazy, the three people who were about to move their legs put their feet back. Zheng Tan continued to stare at the three people expressionlessly. He had already stayed here for 2 days. The weather was good today, and the filming would only start tomorrow. At the beginning, he didn't have his own scenes. Yang Yi said to let him adapt here for a few more days. Cats need time to adapt to a new environment. Someone told Kong Han and Yang Yi that, so Zheng Tan was very free now. He didn't even need to look at the script. Charlie had already told him about the scene. When the time came, there would be someone to guide him step by step. He didn't have as much pressure as the actors. Once he was free, Zheng Tan wanted to go out for a walk. It was his first time in this city. If he didn't take a walk, he would feel sorry for himself. However, when he was about to open the door, the three people who were discussing the TV series on the sofa rushed over and blocked the door. They meant that they didn't want Zheng Tan to go out. Originally, there were 5 people. 2 of them were called over by Kong Han, so now there were only 3 people left here. The 3 people weren't easy to deal with. Zheng Tan couldn't fool them. He always felt that he was being watched. It was even more restrictive than when he was filming the documentary. He was in a bad mood. Charlie could naturally see that, which was why he was conflicted. He knew that when the cat was in a bad mood, it would easily cause trouble. No matter what it was definitely not something they wanted to see. In the end, Charlie had no choice but to call Xiaogua to ask for instructions. They couldn't stay in a deadlock like this, right? If the negotiation wasn't good, the cat could open the door and slip away. They had to constantly worry about whether the key would be taken by the cat. Among the few people here, only Charlie knew that Zheng Tan would use the key to open the door. Therefore, they couldn't stop the cat. They had to negotiate. After asking for instructions from Xiaogua directly called the Jiao Pa. Then, Charlie received new instructions. He took out a box from the supplies the Jiao family prepared for Zheng Tan. There was a cat tag in the box. The cat tag had a contact number on the back and a big Z on the front. Zheng Tan was speechless. When did the Jiao Pa put it there? Also, what was this thing made of? There was even a Z engraved on it. Zheng Tan knew that this thing should be able to locate the location. It was similar to the cat tag the Jiao Pa gave Zheng Tan when he went on a long trip. However, Zheng Tan didn't expect the Jiao Pa to give him another one because of Zheng Tan's change of stage name. After putting on the cat tag, Charlie took Zheng Tan out. The other 2 had nothing to do, so they followed. It was their first time in this coastal city, so they might as well take the opportunity to look around. This time, they didn't wear the uniform Z-suit. They were more casual. This made Zheng Tan sigh in relief. The Z looked very silly. Who knew what other people would think of it? They took the elevator down and stopped when it reached the 18th floor. A man and a woman came in. They frowned when they saw the 3 people and the cat in the elevator. When the man saw Zheng Tan, his eyes were filled with disdain. He was about to say something when the woman next to him pulled him aside. Then they started chatting happily with each other. They were talking about some interesting things. Charlie and the other 2 quietly moved their feet and blocked Zheng Tan behind them. There weren't many people taking the elevator at this time. The elevator wasn't too crowded, and it went down quickly. When they reached the first floor, Zheng Tan walked out of the elevator. The strange man next to him slowed down. When Zheng Tan walked out of the elevator, he raised his foot and stepped on Zheng Tan's back paw. Zheng Tan instinctively felt that something was wrong. He quickened his pace. The man's leather shoes brushed past Zheng Tan's tail and stepped on the ground. After a few quick steps, Zheng Tan looked back at the man. The man had already put on his sunglasses, but from his expression, he seemed to be regretful that he didn't step on him. After Zheng Tan glanced at the man, he followed Charlie and the others to the parking lot. Unlike other celebrities who had nanny cars, the car that they could drive now was borrowed by Yang Yi. It didn't look like a luxury car, but people who knew the industry could tell that it had been modified. Its safety performance was improved by several levels. After Yang Yi knew that they were going out, he told Charlie not to go too far, and to call him directly if anything happened. Charlie chose the nearest square, where leisure and entertainment were integrated. It wasn't far from the place they were renting now. It was only a 20-minute drive. Because the temperature wasn't high, the windows were opened. Charlie was driving, Zheng Tan was in the front passenger seat, and the other two were in the back seat. Zheng Tan looked at the buildings and scenery outside the window. The wind that blew past contained some car exhaust, but there was also a fishy smell in the wind. Woof woof. A dog barked from behind. Zheng Tan looked over. There was a dog looking out of the rear window of the car diagonally behind. It barked when it saw Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan ignored it at first. However, the owner of the car seemed to be playful. He sped up and controlled the speed of the car so that the rear window of the car was level with Zheng Tan's front passenger window. Woof woof woof. The dog barked at Zheng Tan. It didn't know what it smelled, but it sneezed. F***ck. It's not coming out. Zheng Tan raised his hand to brush the fur on his face. He looked at the dog in front of him with a bad gaze. F***ck. A pharaoh. It's really a pharaoh. This is considered an unpopular breed in the country. Hey Charlie, look at the road and focus on driving. This dog looks good. It definitely won't be less than 50,000. Charlie glanced at it quickly, then stared ahead and focused on driving. Looking at its appearance, I estimate it to be 100,000 or even higher, said the other person. They knew a lot about pets like cats and dogs. They could estimate the approximate price at a glance. Zheng Tan didn't care if it was a pharaoh or a rat king. He wanted to punch it a few times now. Hey, it's still wearing a gold necklace. Wear a gold earring if you have the balls. Perhaps the owner of the other car was interested, and Charlie wanted to see the dog more. The two cars drove relatively slowly, and the dog didn't give up barking at Zheng Tan. Its paws on the window moved twice, as if it wanted to reach over. Zheng Tan stared at the dog with a gold necklace. His gaze became more and more dangerous. Not only did it snot my face, it also wanted to use its paws. Therefore, when the two cars were the closest to each other, Zheng Tan stretched out half of her body and slapped the dog's face. The dog probably didn't expect Zheng Tan to suddenly do that, and it was quite painful. It was stunned, but it was soon annoyed. It wanted to rush out of the window, but it was pulled back by the people in the other car. What a joke. He was driving, and he wanted to rush out? Was he looking for trouble? The two people in the back seat saw Zheng Tan's actions, and were so scared that their hearts were in their throats. They quickly asked Zheng Tan to sit back down and not stick his head out. It was easy to get into trouble. Charlie also slowed down and distanced himself from the car. F***ck. I was scared to death just now. One of them patted his chest. He thought that Zheng Tan would jump out directly. There were so many cars behind them. Jumping out was definitely asking for trouble. The car in front seems to be rich too. Do you think they will hold a grudge? The other person in the back seat was a little worried. He saw someone in the car take a picture of their car with his phone. Chapter 345. Looking at the distance between the two cars, the car in front had no intention of slowing down. Charlie and the others felt that the other party should not be so stingy. Otherwise, even if he did not immediately cause trouble, he would at least say some harsh words, right? Okay, don't think too much. We will reach the square soon, Charlie said. The two in the back seat made an end sound, But they felt that the other party's intention of taking a photo with his phone before leaving was a bit like the words, "Don't leave after school if you have the guts," after a conflict in elementary school. They shook their heads. They must be thinking too much. Zhengtan did not think too much. Although he was sneered at just now, he slapped the other party and they were even. They came out to get some fresh air, not to be bullied. Adjusting their mentality and playing freely was the right thing to do. After circling around the square to get a general impression of the place, Charlie found a place to park the car, and then the three people and the cat walked to the square together. This commercial square was a combination of leisure and entertainment. There were fun places and shopping centers, and there were many young people coming and going. Shopping was a bit difficult. After all, they had a cat with them. They could only find a place to sit first, and then take turns to buy things. They came here to buy some specialties to bring back. Because Zhengtan was there, it was inconvenient to bring cats into many shops. Some food stores also had signs that restricted pet access. So after looking around, Charlie chose a beverage store on the side. There were some tables, chairs, and umbrellas outside the beverage store. Some rest tables and chairs were also set up in the square. Now, probably because it was working and school hours, there were not many people. There was an empty table, and Charlie hurried over. The empty table with an umbrella that belonged to the beverage store was gone. Charlie and the others found a table and chair that could not be moved for public use in the square, and there were no umbrellas. Fortunately, the weather was not hot now, and it was okay for the three rough men to bask in the sun. Charlie and Zhengtan stayed here, and the other two went to sell some food and see if there were any special souvenirs. A volunteer came over with a newspaper. Charlie bought a copy to support the charity event and read the news of the city. Zhengtan squatted on a chair and looked around. Then his eyes fell on a table not far away. Under the parasol there were two women sitting there. One was wearing sunglasses, and the other was in her early 20s with a ponytail. She was whispering something to the former, and the latter replied with a few words. Zhengtan didn't recognize the ponytailed girl, but Zhengtan had an impression of the one wearing sunglasses. He didn't recognize her by her face but by her voice. If Zhengtan remembered correctly, the woman's name was Yang Huaishi. She was currently living on the floor below them. She had even visited them upstairs and left them a box of high-end tea leaves. Probably because the other party was wearing sunglasses, Charlie and the others didn't recognize him when they looked around. Zhengtan couldn't see Yang Huaishi's face because he was sitting on the sofa that day, but he remembered his voice. Yang Huaishi's voice wasn't loud now, so it was hard to recognize him by ear, but it wasn't too difficult for Zhengtan. He remembered that the other party had also mentioned that she was a manager with a few small celebrities under her. So, the other woman who looked quite delicate and gave off a refreshing feeling was also a celebrity? But she wasn't wearing sunglasses or a hat. Shouldn't celebrities wear sunglasses or a hat when they go out? At least, that was what Zhengtan felt. After looking over there for a while, Zhengtan shifted his gaze and looked elsewhere. Then he saw a very strange person at the corner. That person was facing the glass of the shop next to them, his face twitching. Zhengtan was curious and wanted to go over to take a look. As soon as he jumped down from the chair, Charlie noticed him. Even when he was reading the newspaper, he would occasionally divert some of his attention to stare at Zhengtan. Black. Z, don't go too far, Charlie said nervously, afraid that Zhengtan would run away. Although the cat had gone for a walk in Chuhua City when they were filming outdoor pet commercials and videos, this was an unfamiliar city after all, and it was difficult to deal with any trouble. Zhengtan glanced at Charlie, indicating that he understood, and continued to walk in that direction. The shop at the corner was connected to the shopping center. It used one-way transparent glass, so people standing outside looked at the glass as if they were looking at a mirror. The person standing in front of the glass looked like he was in his early 20s, and his clothes were not conspicuous. At this moment, the person stood in front of the glass, his facial expression changing. Sometimes he was angry, sometimes he was worried, and sometimes he was embarrassed. One moment, it was as if he had swallowed a mouthful of delicacies, and the next moment, it was as if he had smelled dog poop, and he wanted to vomit all over the ground. People who didn't know what was going on would probably suspect that this person was crazy, or that his face was twitching. But Jung Tan felt that this person seemed to be practicing his acting skills, because sometimes this person would stop and think, and then slowly change his facial expression in front of the glass. Jung Tan walked over and squatted there to watch this person change his face in front of the glass at a close distance. Probably because Jung Tan's attention was too strong, the person's line of sight moved slightly to look at the cat's reflection in the mirror, and then turned sideways to look at Jung Tan, who was 1 meter behind him, and then scratched his head awkwardly. It was always a little embarrassing to be looked at like this, even if the other party was a cat. Boots. Come here for a moment. Yang Huaishi waved over. At the same time, Jung Tan also noticed that Yang Huaishi was sitting at the table where he was sitting, talking to Charlie. Another young woman also sat over. Mr. Charlie, this is Xue. We all call him Little Boots. Boots, this is Mr. Charlie. Yang Huaishi introduced them to each other. There were only 4 chairs here, and now that 3 people came over, Jung Tan didn't sit, and just squatted at the side. He didn't need to argue with the 3 people over a seat. Charlie glanced at Jung Tan, and seeing that Jung Tan didn't seem to be impatient, he let out a sigh of relief, and then continued to talk to the 3 people cautiously. After listening to them, Jung Tan found out that the girl with the framed glasses was called Tao Qi, and the young man who was practicing his facial expression in front of the glass was called Xue Ding, and they were both playing supporting roles in the film. Tao Qi graduated this year, and she was a professional. Not long ago, she was signed by Yixing Culture. As for Xue Ding, he didn't have any formal acting training, but he was an extra for a few years, and was later recruited by Yang Yi. They were the new batch of people who were signed. We didn't start filming today, and I saw that they were too nervous, so I brought them out to relax. Because they're newbies, they're not popular, so no one will disturb them if they sit outside. Yang Huaishi smiled as he spoke to Charlie, and his words were all about the 2 people, which made Charlie confused. What was the use of praising newbies in front of him? He wasn't even from Yixing culture, so he had no right to speak. Yang Huaishi was Yang Yi's distant relative, a distant relative in modern society. Compared to ancient times, their relationship was even more distant. Yang Yi only let Yang Huaishi guide the newbies because of the recommendation of an elder in his hometown, and because he saw that Yang Huaishi had a few years of experience, and was a good person. Other than that, Yang Yi wouldn't specially open the door for her, and Yang Huaishi had to do it herself. The reason why Yang Huaishi was so polite to Charlie, and even introduced the 2 newbies through Charlie, was because she happened to see the car Yang Yi gave to Charlie. It was a car specially modified by Yang Yi. According to the information from the elders in her family, Yang Yi wouldn't personally arrange things if he didn't value them. This was also the reason why she went upstairs to ask about it that day. She didn't expect Charlie to be very capable, as long as he mentioned Tao Qi and Xue Ding's good points when talking to Yang Yi. Her current career depended on these 2 people, and this movie was the most important. It would be even better if Big Boss Yang saw her in a different light. If Charlie knew what Yang Huaishi was thinking, he would definitely tell her that the guy who really had the right to speak was squatting on the ground and yawning in boredom. As they were talking, Tao Qi's phone rang. Sorry, I have to take this. Tao Qi got up and walked a few steps away. Not long after, she came back and said to Yang Huaishi, Sister Yang, Irene said that she and Ronald will be here later. A trace of displeasure flashed in Yang Huaishi's eyes, but she recovered immediately and briefly introduced the 2 to Charlie. Irene was signed by Yixing Culture at the same time as Tao Qi. Irene had participated in a TV series before, and her pay was 20,000 per episode. She heard that someone was looking for her now, and her pay was raised to 50,000 per episode. In Yang Huaishi's opinion, Tao Qi's biggest competitor was Irene. As for Ronald, he was a mixed blood of the 3 kingdoms, which actually referred to the 3 kingdoms of East Asia. Jung Tan didn't understand. If you wanted to be mixed blood, you should have mixed further. What kind of mixed blood was this? Irene was also a supporting character in this movie, and her scenes were similar to Tao Qi's. As for Ronald, he wasn't from Yixing culture. He had just acted in an idol drama, and was quite popular among high school students. At the same time, he was also the second male lead in this movie, and his scenes were more than the other supporting characters. Yang Huaishi's hidden meaning was that Ronald had some family background, and he got this movie through connections. Zheng Tan could tell that Yang Huaishi didn't like the two of them, especially Ronald. Zheng Tan didn't like Ronald either. This was a kind of intuition. Soon Zheng Tan's intuition came true. The person who was walking over, wearing sunglasses and acting like an idol, was Ronald. He was also the guy who almost stepped on Zheng Tan's foot today. When Ronald walked over, Zheng Tan noticed that several girls were glancing in his direction. They hadn't been there before. At the same time, Zheng Tan felt Ronald glancing in his direction, and immediately became alert. "I'll go get 2 stools, Shuading stood up and said. After all, there were only 4 seats here, and there was no place for Ronald. Moreover, Ronald was more powerful than him. So Shuading didn't want to make things difficult for Yang Huaishi. "Don't stand on ceremony. Sit down, sit down. I can get it myself." Ronald patted Shuading's shoulder and walked around. When he passed by where Zheng Tan was squatting, Ronald raised his foot and stepped on Zheng Tan's cat tail. It looked like an unintentional move. When he stepped on it, Zheng Tan quickly retracted his tail and coiled it around his feet, looking up at Ronald. Ronald tilted his head slightly in Zheng Tan's direction and raised an eyebrow. Then he walked straight to another table, where there was an empty chair. Zheng Tan looked at Ronald's back and narrowed his eyes. It was the second time. Although things shouldn't happen more than 3 times, and before leaving Chuhua City, Jiaoma had told Zheng Tan not to cause trouble. Zheng Tan wasn't someone with a good temper. He didn't want to give others a third chance to step on him. The first step was on his foot, the second step was on his tail, and the third time might be on his entire body. By then, there would be several scenes with Ronald. Chapter 346. Although Zheng Tan really wanted to make this 3 Kingdoms hybrid suffer some physical pain, he considered that if he was injured now, it would directly delay the progress of the entire film crew. Every day was money, and he would be looking for trouble. Zheng Tan temporarily gave up on this idea. He still wanted to finish filming early, so that he could celebrate New Year's Day. Changing the actor? Since he was able to get this second male lead in this movie that was basically made up of Yixing culture actors, and he had pulled some strings, it meant that there was an exchange of interests. If something went wrong, with Yang Yi's IQ, he would definitely have some ideas. Zheng Tan still planned to get Yang Yi to give him a red packet, so he could only suppress the physical pain for now. Since he couldn't directly be ruthless now, he could at least make the other party feel uncomfortable. Just as Zheng Tan was thinking about how to make Ronald feel uncomfortable, the film crew officially started filming. Zheng Tan didn't have any scenes in the first few days, but he was still called to the filming site by Yang Yi. All the teams in the film crew were ready. The camera team, recording team, lighting team, art team, and so on were all in place. Unlike the more relaxed atmosphere when Zheng Tan was filming the documentary, there was a tense atmosphere on the set. He didn't know if it was because of the big boss Yang Yi. Yang Yi asked Zheng Tan to come over, so that he could familiarize himself with the set. At the same time, he could also take a look at the other actors filming and get to know them better. Of course, this task was actually handed over to Charlie, and Charlie loved to nag when he was nervous. Ever since he entered the set, Charlie hadn't stopped nagging. Your first scene is about waking up. It's the scene where the male lead wakes up in the morning after sleeping and turning into a cat. Don't think that it's easy. We have to observe how the male lead usually wakes up. Also, your eyes must have that kind of sleepy feeling. Do you know the feeling of haziness? Why don't you take a nap first? Also, don't forget to brush your teeth seriously. I heard that you have to take a close yawn scene. It's not good if there are shreds of flesh between your teeth. Your teeth must be white. Come, open your mouth and take a look at your teeth first. Yang Yi was busy at the moment, and had no time to attend to Zheng Tan's side. Kong Han's side was also busy. A few of the main and supporting characters who had scenes were all busy with their own things. Generally speaking, after studying the script and deciding on the actors, the filming of the movie would enter the pre-production stage. During this time, the director and actors would rehearse, which was very beneficial for character analysis and acting preparation. Through the rehearsal process, the director and the actors worked together to figure out how to play their roles more successfully. Most of the time, this kind of work would last for several weeks or even longer. But this time they were in a hurry. It was already September, and if they delayed any longer, Some scenes would be difficult to shoot due to the weather. Therefore, there was not much time for the actors to figure out and practice. Only the lead actors and the director spent more time together. This was also the reason why Zheng Tan and the others had not seen the male and female leads in the past few days. Everyone was busy. Only Zheng Tan was so idle that it made people jealous. Charlie held the script and was still in deep thought, muttering to himself. Zheng Tan sniffed the air and slowly walked in a direction. Hey, where are you going? Wait, don't run around. This is the set. Charlie did not have time to say more. He and the other four followed closely behind Zheng Tan. Charlie, look over there. One of them nudged Charlie with his elbow. What are you looking at? Now is not the time to look at celebrities. Charlie did not even raise his head. His gaze followed Zheng Tan, holding the script in his hand. No, look. Charlie had no choice. He raised his head and looked in the direction his companion was pointing. F***CK. Charlie said in a low voice. Zheng Tan brought Charlie and the others to the place where a big-eared dog with a golden necklace was squatting. It was the pharaoh that was slapped in the car that day. The pharaoh also saw Zheng Tan. It wagged its tail and stared at him. It was probably ordered by its owner to squat there obediently and not bark. That was why it was so obedient. Otherwise, if there was no guarantee, Yang Yi would not easily let someone bring a dog into the set. However, there did seem to be a dog in the movie, but according to the original script, it should be a small Yorkshire, not a big pharaoh. Just as Charlie and the others were thinking about leaving quickly, a voice came from the other side. Yo! What a coincidence! The owner of the voice walked towards the pharaoh. Judging from the pharaoh's servile manner of wagging its tail, he knew that it was its owner. Charlie and the others suddenly became nervous. When this person said, "What a coincidence," he did not look surprised at all. It was obvious that he knew that they would come here. Sure enough, I told you that they wouldn't let it go. The other two people who went out with Zheng Tan that day whispered. Oh no, he won't find trouble with Black. Z, right? Another person said. As they were talking, Yang Yi asked Charlie and the others to go over. Old Wang, are you talking about them? Yang Yi pointed at Charlie and the others who had uneasiness in their eyes and said to the person who was touching the dog's head. Yes, you don't know. That cat has a bad temper and is very brave. It was lying on the car window and slapped it when it rushed over. Old Wang said with a smile. He did not look angry. You must have provoked it first, Yang Yi said with certainty. Old Wang just smiled and did not refute, but his eyes were staring in Zheng Tan's direction. Zheng Tan was not afraid. When he saw the dog, he had thought about it. Regardless of whether the other party came here intentionally or not, if they met now, if the other party insisted on pursuing the matter, he could still ask Yang Yi for help. If he backed off now, what would he do if he could not find anyone to help him when trouble came? He was not familiar with the place. The Pharaoh Hound's owner was surnamed Wang. Although Yang Yi called him Old Wang, he was actually 36 or 37 years old. Not even 40 years old. He looked like a nouveau riche, but he knew both Yang Yi and Kong Han. From the way Yang Yi spoke to him, it could be seen that he had a good relationship with Yang Yi. After Charlie came over, Old Wang chatted with Charlie, which made Charlie and the others feel much better. So the original Yorkshire's role has been changed to this Pharaoh Hound. Charlie looked at Yang Yi. Yes, we have already discussed with Yorkshire's owner. When the time comes, we will let Mika appear. The script has also been slightly adjusted. Take a look, Yang Yi said. Originally, the Pharaoh Hound was named Michael by Old Wang's wife. Old Wang said that he wanted to give it a more Western name. In the end, Old Wang, a bad student, said that the name sounded like a card seller, so it became the current Mika. It must be hard for Mika to have a bad student as a master, Yang Yi thought. So that was it. Charlie and the others were relieved. Haha, this is also called no discord, no concord. Indeed. Mika had been trained, but it was easy to get carried away. That day, it was leaning on the car window to bark. As for sneezing, Zheng Tan now knew. Under non-training conditions, this dog would sneeze as long as it was stared at for more than 15 seconds. Zheng Tan stared into Mika's eyes. After 10 seconds, the dog could no longer sit still. After another 5 seconds, it sneezed. Continuing to stare, it continued to sneeze. and it even turned left and right and whimpered softly, as if embarrassed. Of course, this was only the reaction of people who stared with good intentions. If they had bad intentions, the treatment was completely different. Not only would it bark, it was possible that it would pounce and bite. The film crew was very polite to old Wang, and so were the actors. They probably knew that this person was a potential investor. Even if there was no investment in this movie, there would be investment in the future. It was better to build a good relationship. After leaving, Charlie and the others were talking. In the narrow corridor, a few people walked over. "Excuse me." The person walking in front forcibly blocked Charlie and left the corridor for the people behind. Although it was not spacious, it was still possible for 3 people to walk side by side. However, that person blocked Charlie and the others, making it difficult for them to move. It was not until all of them had walked past that he let go of Charlie and the others. "Hey Charlie, who are they?" The person walking in the middle is called Ronald, an idol star. "You two didn't go out that day, so you didn't see him." "Oh, it's him. He's not a big shot, but he's so arrogant," one of them muttered. "He has a backer." "Forget it, it's nothing. Don't worry about it." Adhering to the principle of taking a step back, Charlie continued to walk with his people, and Jung Tan heard the words of the people who had already walked past. "We were a little too tough just now. We still don't know the details of the other party." The person who spoke was the person next to Ronald, who should be an assistant or something. Ronald smiled nonchalantly and said, "He's just a cat feeder. Do you really think he's that capable? Listen to him. He's just a cat feeder." His tone was just like how some people who lived a luxurious life would mock the villagers, saying, "He's just a farmer." He was blatantly looking down on others. Looking down on Charlie? Isn't he just a cat feeder? Doesn't have much capability? Just wait and see. The few of them spoke softly, probably for the sake of their image. Others did not know what they were talking about, but Jung Tan's sharp hearing allowed him to take note of it. After filming began, Jung Tan saw the 2 main leads, Wei Wen and Shi Xiaotian. Wei Wen was now regarded as a goddess by many young people. Needless to say, she was extremely charming. As for the male lead, Shi Xiaotian, he was the type that everyone, from teenage girls to middle-aged women in their 50s or 60s, adored. He was a rather cheerful young man. Be it Wei Wen or Shi Xiaotian, both of them were very well behaved. Or rather, they knew how to restrain themselves and knew where they stood. Firstly, they were not big shots. Secondly, they did not have a strong backer. And thirdly, they had to work hard to impress the big boss. Of course, they would do their best to showcase their strengths. In the film crew, regardless of whether it was the lighting, prop masters, or some of the workers whose faces were hard to remember, the 2 of them behaved appropriately and did not lower themselves or appear to be high and mighty. Charlie, who had just chatted with Shi Xiaotian and Wei Wen, was now in a state of excitement. He held on to the autograph and shared his excitement with the other 4 teammates. Jung Tan, on the other hand, was much calmer. He saw Wei Wen and Shi Xiaotian walking over to talk to a person who was fiddling with the camera. They addressed him as Teacher Jiang, politely and respectfully. At the same time, Tao Qi and Xue Ding, who were memorizing their lines, were leaning against the wall near Jung Tan while Yang Huaishi was whispering to them. If they were just memorizing their lines, Jung Tan would not have paid much attention to them. However, they were talking about the person who was filming. That person's surname is Jiang. Tao Qi, you should know him. He's in charge of filming, and also a teacher of your drama academy. He has the right to stop filming on the set. Jung Tan looked at the middle-aged man whose looks were really unflattering. He was a figure that could be easily overlooked, but could not be ignored. Chapter 347. Based on Yang Huaishi's words, this Mr. Jiang seemed to have some background. That was to be expected. Anyone who was invited by Yang Yi to the film crew, be it filming or delivering lunchboxes, was no ordinary person. He had long heard that many film crew members were capable of doing their own professional work and dealing with unexpected situations such as fires and explosions. They were all amazing people. As for this Mr. Jiang, his job in the crew was to hang the film on the camera and film it. After filming, he would study the movements on the film and cut out the parts that he was not satisfied with. Then he would link the parts that he was satisfied with and show it to everyone. During the filming process, Yang Huixi said that Mr. Jiang once called for a stop when an actor was in the middle of filming, because he wanted to change the film. Another time, when an actor was in the middle of a scene where he successfully killed a spy, Mr. Jiang called for a stop again. The reason was that he did not see the actor's knife clearly, and wanted the actor to kill the spy again. That actor and the spy, who was lying on the ground covered in blood, both cried silently. Later on, some actors would ask him before filming, "Mr. Jiang, are you done hanging the film? Or can you move the camera so that we can see my movements clearly from here?" However, this person had his own ideas, and it was difficult for others to change his mind. Of course, if it was a big-name actor, he would not call for a stop and would only cooperate. As for small actors, they had to listen to Mr. Jiang's words. Zheng Tan walked in front of Mr. Jiang and looked at him. He wanted to understand this person's temper, and what he thought of Ronald and himself. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if Mr. Jiang called for a stop at an unsuitable time. The person who was fiddling with the camera noticed Zheng Tan's gaze, and turned to look. When he saw that it was the cat that Mr. Yang mentioned, he was puzzled. What was this cat trying to do? Could it be that it wanted to build a good relationship with him before filming like the other actors? Thinking of this, Teacher Jiang shook his head and laughed at his own thoughts. Then, he turned back and continued to fiddle with the camera. After a while, he found that the cat was still next to him, seemingly interested in watching him fiddle with the camera. "Can you understand?" Mr. Jiang turned around and looked at the cat. He looked at the Z cat tag on the black cat's neck. "Z, right? It's not your turn yet. Go to sleep." Pausing for a moment, Mr. Jiang took out a bag of unfinished biscuits from his pocket. He crouched down and handed it to the black cat, only to find that the cat gave it a critical look before turning away. "Hey, is that disdain?" Teacher Jiang said to the person next to her. "That look in its eyes just now was one of disdain, right?" "I think so." Seeing Yang Yi walking over, Teacher Jiang told him what had happened earlier. Yang Yi looked at the black cat's retreating figure and smiled at Teacher Jiang. "What do you think of that cat?" "Not bad. It's suitable for this show." Although Zheng Tan walked away, he kept his ears perked up, paying attention to the movements over there. After hearing the conversation between Mr. Jiang and Yang Yi, Zheng Tan was relieved. Mr. Jiang didn't hate cats, and his evaluation of him was good. Plus, because of Yang Yi, he probably wouldn't stop him from acting. As for Ronald, Mr. Jiang didn't mention him, so he didn't know what he thought. The movie was 1.5 hours long, with more than 100 scenes and thousands of shots. The number of scenes wasn't arranged according to order. Yang Yi and Kong Han had their own arrangements. Since the start of filming, Zheng Tan had watched the scenes of the two main leads, Ronald, Tao Qi, Xueding, and the others. Except for a few NGs at the beginning due to nervousness and unfamiliarity, everyone was fine in the next few days. Kong Han didn't show a sour face either. Although Zheng Tan didn't like Ronald, his acting was really good. He didn't know if it was because he was playing the role of an arrogant rich second generation, but his acting wasn't bad. The scene they were filming now was the scene of the male lead, female lead, and Xueding. As the neighbor of the male lead, Xueding's side character appeared quite often. Zheng Tan squatted next to Yang Yi, listening to Yang Yi and Old Wang talking in a low voice. There was no one else here, so their whispering wouldn't be heard by others. That side character isn't bad. He wasn't overshadowed by the two main leads, nor did he steal the show. His acting is okay too, Old Wang said. He didn't use too many professional words to comment, and instead just gave a simple summary. Wei Wen and Shi Xiaotian were both talented and had received professional education and training. They also had experience in acting. Hence, there was no doubt about their abilities. If they weren't capable enough, Kong Han wouldn't have let them play the lead roles. To everyone's surprise, Xueding, who usually didn't stand out, was also praised by Kong Han and Old Wang. Old Wang's evaluation of Xueding's "not bad" was already considered high. "He's a newly recruited extras," Yang Yi said. Although it couldn't be seen on his face, one could tell from his tone that he was quite satisfied with Xueding's performance. One of the reasons why Hollywood movies were so popular around the world was because of their actors. Not only did they have a team of international stars, but they also had hundreds of thousands of professional and semi-professional actors. In Hollywood movies, the pedestrians on the streets, soldiers in battle, tourists on the beach, and diners in restaurants were almost all played by professional and semi-professional actors. They weren't random passers-by. Over there, even if they were working as extras, they could still earn a middle-class income. This large and high-quality team of extras was an important part of the strength of Hollywood actors. Similarly, there was also a team of more than 100,000 extras in the local movie industry, who were often referred to as drifters in the industry. However, the standards of local extras were mediocre, and they generally didn't receive professional education. Most of them didn't have the basic qualities of an actor, and were just living props during filming. Most extras couldn't catch the eye of those professionals, but there were a small number of extras who could master a certain level of acting skills after a long period of practice, such as Shweding. Back when he was overseas, Yang Yi had specially observed the filming of movies over there. After he returned, he also went to some filming locations to take a look at the extras. Shweding was discovered by Yang Yi at that time. After observing him for a period of time, he finally decided to sign him. Yang Yi was a person who liked to discover new things. The older generation of performing artists once said that there are only small-time actors on the stage, and there are no minor roles. Even if it's just a line, it has to be well acted out. Even if it's a supporting role or a cameo, the effort and enthusiasm put into it should be comparable to playing the lead role. Yang Yi said, I once found out that the kid practiced the action of drawing a gun hundreds of times just to play the role of a cameo police officer. Yang Yi took a fancy to Shweding's serious attitude. There were so many actors every year, and most of them had received systematic training. Even if they were professionals, after a few years, some were very famous, some were unknown, some had superb acting skills, and some were just there to make up the numbers. Character and ability weren't proportional, and reputation and talent weren't always proportional. Have you heard of a saying? Yang Yi asked. What? Stupid people can't put in the effort to be stupid. Stupid is what smart people do. Old Wang smiled and didn't say anything. He was recognized as a bad student back then, but looking at it now, those classmates of his, those peers who were once high-spirited, were still working day and night for a house. Zheng Tan was deep in thought at the side. After another week, it was finally Zheng Tan's turn. Since the day before, Charlie had been acting even more nervous than Zheng Tan, which amused Yang Yi. Of course, perhaps in the eyes of many, cats wouldn't be nervous and wouldn't realize what they had to do next. The one who was nervous was naturally Charlie. That was understandable, and everyone expressed their understanding when they saw Charlie. Charlie was on the verge of tears. After arriving at the set, Charlie once again told Zheng Tan about the scenes he had to film today. After a break after Wei Wen and Shi Xiaoyan's scene, Zheng Tan's scene began. Charlie gripped the script tightly, his palms sweaty, and the paper of the script was wrinkled. Everyone around them craned their necks to watch, and the actors who had just finished filming the previous scene didn't leave either. It was their first time acting on the same stage with cats, and it was a novel experience for them. Even Yang Huaishi didn't analyze the roles and lines for Tao Qi and Shweding, which was rare. Where's the cat food? Where's the cat food? Don't they have to prepare food when filming a pet film? Everyone was puzzled. Old Wang brought Miko along and watched from a close distance, which was rare for them. After receiving an okay from Charlie, Kong Han gestured for everyone to get into position. Action. After waiting for a few seconds, there was still no movement. The bulge on the bed looked like it was really asleep. Everyone around them was puzzled too. Do we have to use cat food to tempt it? Charlie and the rest were anxious. Black charcoal wasn't like this in the past. It would start as soon as it was shouted. Could it be that it didn't understand the word action? That didn't seem right either. Xiao Guo would sometimes say action, and it would also say action when filming documentaries. Sometimes it would directly shout action, and this cat would also be very cooperative. What's wrong with it today? Ronald sneered as if he was watching a good show. His manager beside him tugged at his sleeve and pursed his lips disapprovingly. Kong Han frowned and then looked at Charlie. Charlie was so nervous that he was sweating all over. Seeing that Zheng Tan didn't cooperate after Director Kong shouted action, and Kong Han looked over, he panicked and couldn't care less. he said to the other side. Z, it's starting. The other side finally moved. In a somewhat messy room, on a small bed, a furry pointy black ear peeked out from under the thin blanket. The alarm clock rang. The lump on the bed moved, and the tip of a black inverted triangular nose peeked out from under the thin blanket. Probably because of the discomfort, a few long whiskers also shook twice. Its mouth opened and yawned, revealing the white fangs in its mouth. Its mouth was wide open because it was yawning, and its tongue was covered in spikes. It was obviously not a human's. Its half-opened eyes were hazy as if it had just woken up. It raised its head slightly and looked in the direction of the window. Because of the light shining in from the window, the pupils in its eyes shrank from oval to narrow shuttles, like a predator that had just woken up in the jungle. For this scene, from waking up to feeling uncomfortable to standing in front of the full-length mirror, there were no less than 10 takes. They were shot separately, and there was also a scene where it walked upright, which was also shot several times. It wasn't that Zheng Tan couldn't act, but that he didn't dare to act directly. He would be treated like a monster. Therefore, Zheng Tan pretended to be stupid and didn't act according to the script. Naturally, Kong Han would shout cut. But what Zheng Tan didn't know was that in the eyes of Kong Han and many others, this was enough of a hassle. After filming this scene, the people around them were still praising it, and Zheng Tan's face was hot. Chapter 348. The first day of filming went smoothly, and Charlie and the others were relieved. When they reported to Xiaoguo on the phone, their tone was very relaxed. This made them feel more confident about the upcoming days of filming, and they were not so nervous anymore. The people in the film crew are very good to us. Whether it's Director Yang or Director Kong, they're all very nice to talk to. The people in the film crew are also very polite to us. No, we didn't reveal anything. Of course we know that. We won't reveal Black Charcoal's background. Well, okay. Charlie was talking on the phone, Zheng Tan was lying on the sofa watching TV, and the others were playing poker. The TV was playing an idol drama, and it was the one that Ronald was in. Ronald's role in the drama was very similar to that in the movie. Zheng Tan looked at Ronald in the movie. If this person was really acting as himself, it would be easier to speculate this person's personality and preferences. Zheng Tan had once thought of causing trouble and refusing to cooperate with Ronald when she was acting in the same scene as him. However, after thinking about it, she realized that it would only lower her reputation in other people's hearts and would not have much effect on Ronald. The only reason there was a cut was because of Zheng Tan, not Ronald. The film crew would definitely sympathize with Ronald. Not only would it be counterproductive, but it would also interfere with the progress of filming. This method could not be used. While watching the melodramatic drama on TV, Zheng Tan recalled the script. Black Charcoal, watch less of this kind of drama. You'll become an idiot if you watch too much of it. The person who lost a pack of cigarettes over there came over and said to Zheng Tan. At the same time, he planned to take the remote control at Zheng Tan's feet and change the channel. This person naturally did not think that Zheng Tan could really understand these dramas. He only thought that Zheng Tan was watching the annoying Ronald, and he wanted to watch a war of resistance against the Japanese. Zheng Tan raised his paw and pressed down on the remote control when he reached out, not allowing him to take it. Meeting Zheng Tan's gaze, the person shook his head helplessly. Okay, continue watching. After that, the person returned to the game and continued to play. After the drama ended, Zheng Tan looked at the clock on the wall. It was almost 11 o'clock. It was better to wash up and go to bed. He still had to continue filming tomorrow. There were only 3 rooms here. Zheng Tan had 1 room to himself, and the other 2 were divided among the 5 of them. In the following days, Zheng Tan was still very idle. In the beginning, he wasn't used to it. After all, there were so many people around him. There were celebrities, and perhaps even future best actors and actresses. It was impossible to say that he was completely calm. However, Zheng Tan quickly got used to it. He even had the time to think about when he should behave more clumsily. On this day there was Zheng Tan's scene again. The male lead went to the supermarket to buy an electric toothbrush. He thought that brushing his teeth after he turned into a cat would save him a lot of trouble. However, as soon as he paid for the toothbrush, he realized that black fur had started to appear on the back of his hand. He knew that he was about to turn into a cat, so he quickly drove home. There was a period of time for him to change from a human to a cat. He had to return home during this period of time. There was also a process of racing. Of course, during the filming, it wasn't really racing. He ran upstairs like a gust of wind. After he ran home, he slammed the door shut. The scene changed. In the room, the shopping bag rolled all over the floor. The person who had just entered the door was gone. There were only clothes and pants on the floor. A black cat crawled out of the sweatshirt. The filming went very smoothly. When Jung Tan crawled out, he even performed exceptionally. He looked like he was panting, and then he lay down as if he had lost all his strength. This scene is over. Kong Han was very satisfied with the results and progress of this morning's filming. He thought that it would be great if it continued like this. Unfortunately, Kong Han's good mood didn't last long. During the afternoon's filming, Kong Han flipped out. NG again, NG again, NG again, NG again, NG again. Kong Han slammed the rolled-up book in his hand onto the floor. His face was gloomy. Unlike his usual friendly attitude, Kong Han changed when he was filming. Sometimes he was irritable, and sometimes he looked like he was unapproachable. Jung Tan looked at Ronald, who also looked unhappy, and the lead actress, Wei Wen. Although Wei Wen's expression was not obvious, it was obvious that she was also very dissatisfied. As for the reason for the NG, it was naturally because of Ronald. Before the filming started, Kong Han had told the lead actors and supporting actors about the scene. Although he didn't explain it in detail or in depth, this movie didn't have much depth to it. It sold novelty in comedy. But even if it didn't have much depth, it still depended on acting skills. When he talked about the scene, the other actors were very cooperative. Only Ronald didn't. He went out to fool around every 2 or 3 days. Kong Han also didn't force himself to be annoying. Originally, Kong Han thought that the role of the second male lead in the movie wouldn't be too difficult for Ronald. He was basically acting as himself, but there were always problems. Now everyone was playing along with him, but he only had a straight face. He didn't even humbly ask about what he did well. There was a saying in the industry, when standing in front of the camera, you are the actor's only support. Therefore, even if all kinds of advanced modern equipment were fighting to go on stage, and directors could stare at the monitor from other places and give instructions, Kong Han was like most directors every time. He stood next to or near the camera, so that it was more convenient for the actors to communicate with the director directly. He didn't want them to feel uneasy after filming a scene, and think about how it was shot, and what the director thought. But now young Master Ronald didn't give him face. Although Kong Han was angry, he couldn't let Ronald be like this. "Ronald, come here," Kong Han said in a very bad tone. Ronald still looked unhappy. He only gave face to Yang Yi here. He didn't even give face to Kong Han. The assistant whispered a few words of persuasion before Ronald reluctantly walked over. Kong Han was so angry that he almost suffered internal injuries. At the same time, Kong Han decided in his heart that in the future, Ronald would be eliminated from all the movies he directed. This time he let him join as the second male lead because of Ronald's father. Did this person really think that he was a super movie king that everyone wanted? In the future, this person should just act in idol dramas. This scene was about the female lead and the second male lead in the movie. The two of them had different opinions about the male lead's recent inexplicable disappearance. They also had a dispute. However, it was this scene that couldn't be passed. The reason was Ronald. "You should be acting like, 'I'm so good, why didn't you choose me?' Not 'I'm so good you're nothing.' Also you're acting, not imitating." Even vulgarities came out. It was obvious that Kong Han was quite dissatisfied now. The others didn't understand Kong Han's words, but Ronald himself knew. He was indeed imitating it. There was a very popular movie before. There was a rich young master in the movie, and the actor was an A-list movie star. He was very capable. The scene was where the rich young master was very angry with a disloyal woman. Kong Han had seen it before, and Ronald's facial expression was very similar to that scene. Or rather, it was almost a copy of that actor's expression. Ronald did a good job in imitating, but this wasn't the result that Kong Han wanted. He wasn't even used to this scene. Kong Han and Ronald talked alone for about 20 minutes. Then, Ronald probably got into the mood and continued to shoot. However, they changed the original plan. They would shoot a series of scenes from the quarrel to the second male lead sitting in front of the table pouring wine, and then angrily leaving. Different directors' works had their own artistic characteristics. For example, some directors had their own unique way of using long shots. Moreover, each scene was a single shot. In other words, the scene that took place in one place had to be shot in one go without stopping. Of course, there might be rough and not enough details in this way, which was more difficult to shoot. Kong Han didn't belong to this category. Like many other directors, each scene in his works was composed of several shots. Influenced by some European and American movies, the shooting method of dividing the shots into smaller and smaller pieces was very popular. However, Kong Han wasn't a stubborn person. Since there were some small problems with Ronald, he just needed to find a suitable way to solve it. As for facial expressions, since Ronald couldn't act well, then forget it. He just needed to find another way. It wasn't that Kong Han didn't want to strive for perfection, but this was how actors were. When they really got into character, they would perform exceptionally well. Action. The female lead put the black cat in her arms on the chair as she spoke to the second male lead. Zheng Tan jumped from the chair to the table. There were a few bottles of wine on the table. They were all high-end wine. At least, the bottles looked like high-end wine bottles. Today, after getting close to Wei Wan, Zheng Tan realized that her figure was really good. Those breasts, those long legs. The others didn't even know what the black cat was thinking. They even thought that the cat was really obedient and cooperative. As expected of a cat that the director and boss found to shoot a movie. It was much less worrisome than Ronald. This time Ronald did improve, but they couldn't look at it carefully. If they shot a close-up, it wouldn't work. However, it was up to Kong Han to decide how to deal with it. Zheng Tan saw the two men arguing 2 steps away. She was so engrossed in her acting that the tip of her tail wagged twice. Curiously, she walked to the 2 unfinished cups of wine and dipped her claws into one of the half-filled cups to rinse it. This glass was slightly to the right. It was the glass that Ronald had just taken. The 2 people were so engrossed in their acting that they didn't notice Zheng Tan at all. Zheng Tan quickly retracted his hand and took a few steps away from the glass, as if this toy was boring. Kong Han, who had a gloomy face, couldn't help but smile. However, Ronald wasn't going to drink the wine in the glass, but the half-filled bottle next to it. Of course, he wasn't going to drink it all. He was just putting on an act. Since that was the case, he didn't call for a cut. It was a pleasant surprise to be able to film this scene. When the time came, it would add a joke to the movie. Perhaps the audience would think that this was the original arrangement. After the protagonist turned into a cat, she didn't like the second male lead, so she reached out her paw to stir the wine in the glass. She thought that she could trick the other party, but she didn't expect that the other party didn't take the wine glass. Instead, he took the half-filled bottle next to it. Besides, it wasn't easy for Ronald to make such progress. It would be a pity to stop. No one wanted to accompany him in NGs. The others around them had the same thought as Kong Han. Only Ronald's assistant was a little worried. He looked in Kong Han's direction and opened his mouth. However, Ronald had finally found his groove. If he stopped this time, it would be hard to say what would happen next time. Obviously, Kong Han didn't have the patience to continue talking to Ronald. Even Yang Yi showed obvious impatience. He didn't dare to be unlucky. Forget it. Hopefully, Ronald can follow the script. Teacher Jiang looked at Kong Han. Seeing that Kong Han didn't call for a cut, she didn't say anything. On the other side, after the second male lead and the female lead quarreled, the second male lead walked to the table angrily and sat down. Then, he took the half-filled glass of wine on the table and poured it directly into his mouth without leaving a single drop. He didn't even touch the half-filled bottle of wine that he had arranged beforehand. The people around them were speechless. Chapter 349. Next to them, Tao Qi, Xueding, and the others were holding back their laughter until their faces turned red. Yang Huaishi even covered his mouth, afraid that he would really laugh out loud. Even Kong Han, who had been gloomy for a long time, was so angry that he covered his face with a rolled-up book. Wasn't this Ronald looking for trouble? He didn't play by the rules, so who could he blame now that things had turned out this way? Ronald didn't pay attention to the glass just now. Although he felt that the taste of the wine was a little strange, he didn't care. He just wanted to act out the scene as soon as possible. After this scene was over and Kong Han decided to pass, Ronald noticed that everyone was looking at him strangely. He thought that everyone was looking down on his performance just now and laughing at his NGs this afternoon. He snorted, took the sunglasses, and left. He didn't have any more scenes in the afternoon, so he planned to leave. He felt particularly unhappy here, so he went out to vent his anger. Kong Han didn't care about him and let the film crew take a 10-minute break before continuing. Although this scene was over, everyone was holding back their laughter, especially those who didn't like Ronald. They were very happy. In fact, everyone thought that Jung Tan's behavior just now was just the result of a cat's whim. After all, cats were always a little naughty. People who raised cats knew and understood. They didn't think that Jung Tan did it deliberately. It was just a cat. How could it be so complicated? However, it was this cat that had tricked Ronald in front of everyone. Everyone felt that Ronald had asked for it. This was what Jung Tan learned from Zhua Kitten. Zhua Kitten's method of teasing teachers and students made Jung Tan know that once you understood a person's habits, tricking them was a matter of minutes. Long before this scene, Jung Tan heard Ronald complain to his assistant about why he had to drink from a bottle. It was too indecent, like a homeless person on the street. Jung Tan saw that in the idle drama that Ronald acted in, there was no one who held a bottle of wine. Instead, he held a wine glass like a noble. Moreover, Ronald was a bit of a person who did things his own way. No matter what others said, he only did things according to his own preferences. To put it nicely, it was a love of inappropriate self-expression. To put it bluntly, it was called messing around. Jung Tan was just giving it a try today. It didn't matter if he couldn't trick Ronald. He wouldn't stop the show midway. He didn't expect Ronald to really drink it. In fact, the wine in the glass wasn't real wine. It was just some concocted drinks that looked very similar to those high-end wines. But what was in the drink after the cat's paws were rinsed? Dust. Bacteria? Oh, there were probably a few strands of hair from the cat's front paws, which were used to sweep the floor and step on the toilet every day. He drank all of it just like that. He drank so boldly. In many people's eyes, Ronald had drunk the cat's foot-washing water. Of course, they wouldn't go out and talk about it. They were still filming, and it would cause trouble. Ronald only found out about this the next day. He was so angry that he smashed everything in his room. On the set, he didn't like anyone, and his attitude wasn't good either. Especially the way he looked at Jung Tan. It was as if he wanted to fight him to the death. His assistant and manager both advised him to bear with it for the time being, but it was obviously to no avail. One day, Ronald was late for the 7th time. Lao Wang laughed. Hey, you're quite a big shot. Other than Yang Yi, only Lao Wang would say this directly. He didn't avoid anything and wasn't afraid of Ronald's revenge. He knew Ronald's background and could deal with it. Lao Wang looked carefree and said whatever he wanted, but if there was really someone he couldn't afford to offend, Lao Wang wouldn't say it like that. He wasn't stupid, and he definitely wasn't stupid to be able to work so hard to get to where he was now. This he was obviously mocking. Ronald also heard it and glared at Lao Wang. Lao Wang smiled and greeted him, not avoiding his gaze. In the end, it was Ronald who looked away first. Lao Wang dug his ear with his little finger and turned to look at the dog next to him. Mika, why do some people take things too hard and look for trouble? Mika, who was squatting next to him, didn't understand its owner's words. When it saw its owner looking at it, 15 seconds later, it began to sneeze uncomfortably. Look at your silly face. Lao Wang patted Mika's head and continued to think of a movie to invest in, and let Mika make a cameo appearance. He heard from Yang Yi that in the previous documentary, the Shaoguang Group's chairman's cat made a cameo appearance. Lao Wang liked to follow the trend. After he became rich and had a status, he liked to follow the trend even more. It was the same for raising a dog, but it was different from raising a Tibetan Mastiff. He felt that the pharaoh's breed sounded very appetizing. It sounded like it belonged to Lao Wang's family, so he raised it. Of course, those who could make him follow the trend were those who had a much higher social status than him. As for Ronald and Ronald's father, the father was good, but the son was a burden. Fortunately, my son taught him well, Lao Wang thought proudly. In fact, if it was in the past, Ronald wouldn't have directly thrown his temper at teacher Jiang and the others. He wouldn't have casually offended those who had some seniority in the circle. However, Ronald's mood had taken a turn for the worse these few days, not only because of Zheng Tan's actions that day, but also because of Kong Han's high expectations. When the pressure was great, his temper would become irritable. He would only restrain himself when Yang Yi reprimanded him. Kong Han almost asked him to leave directly. He would rather reshoot. If Ronald's father didn't call him personally, Ronald might not even be on the set. After being reprimanded by his father, Ronald was well-behaved for a few days. However, he was only well-behaved for a few days. Very soon he started to cause trouble again. He would get injured every 2 to 3 days. Although it was a small injury, it was enough to make people worried. What was even funnier was that these injuries were all self-inflicted. For example, he insisted on taking a detour from the originally planned route. In the end, he almost scratched his leg. Although the frame built for the cat looked similar to the ladders that people commonly used, it wasn't specially made for people to use. During the shoot, Ronald didn't follow the original script to climb the stairs. Instead, he ran to climb the ladder. If Kong Han hadn't shouted cut, he would have really stepped on the cat and used the ladder to climb up. It would be lucky if he didn't fall and get injured. Zheng Tan didn't take the initiative to provoke him. He just made preparations. Every time, it was Ronald who came to him himself. After that, Zheng Tan would put on a very innocent face. Besides, it wasn't his fault. It was Ronald who took the initiative. He just helped a little. Every time it was Ronald's turn to act, Kong Han frowned. He knew that this young Master Luo was starting to play himself again. If it were any other actor, Kong Han would have already shouted cut. However, it was Ronald. He just wanted this young Master Luo to quickly finish the shoot and get out. Let him play himself. As long as the effect of the shoot wasn't bad, it was fine. Fortunately, he didn't let him be the main lead. He also didn't let him take on the other challenging roles. The other actors and staff also had the same opinion in their hearts. Why do you keep staring at that cat? The plank over there isn't strong enough. We told you to go from the other side. Did you go? The place where the cat is squatting is weaker. It's more dangerous for people to be there. Didn't they tell you? Didn't they tell you all these? Kong Han was speechless. This dissatisfaction was directed at Ronald, not Zheng Tan. He had always adhered to the principle of putting people first. Before shooting, he had to ask the relevant staff to be very careful. However, this person didn't follow the rules. If Kong Han's status in the circle was higher, he would definitely let Ronald leave directly. However, Kong Han was still young and hadn't worked hard to reach that height. Some things had to be endured. However, he complained a lot to Yang Yi in private. Yang Yi also promised that he wouldn't let Ronald act in other shows in the future, unless this person made substantial improvements that everyone was willing to accept. Until then, it was better to not see it. Amid such fear, the shooting came to an end. Ronald's last scene was a bit of a struggle. He didn't chase after the gangster but ran behind the cat's butt. In the end, he didn't know why he slipped and fell. His face was also injured. There was a circle of blood at the bottom right of his right eyelid. Kong Han asked Ronald's agent to quickly take Ronald to the hospital for treatment. As for the scenes, they could just reshoot it when the time came. What did people say about Ronald when they talked about him? He couldn't even compare to a cat. Fortunately, Ronald wasn't in the scenes involving the explosion. Otherwise, who knew what kind of trouble he would cause? When they finally finished shooting, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone thought that they finally didn't have to worry about young Master Luo anymore. He was really hard to please. Even Charlie felt that compared to young Master Luo, Zheng Tan was simply too easy to worry about. This time, Zheng Tan didn't use a stunt double until the movie was finished shooting. Yes, in order to prevent some unexpected situations or uncooperative situations, Kong Han also found someone to borrow a black cat that looked quite similar to Zheng Tan. It was to be Zheng Tan's stunt double in this film. However, during this period of time, the cat had never been used. However, it didn't become anxious because of this. It was served with good food and drinks every day. It was quite quiet. After eating, It slept and became fatter. Compared to Zheng Tan, it was really too obedient. It was so obedient that it didn't have much vitality. However, for many people living in the city, it was easy to take care of such a cat. If it was really like Zheng Tan, they would probably be in a constant state of fear and worry all day long. If they didn't pay attention, they would realize that it was missing. It was already the end of December. Although the temperature here was slightly higher than in Chuhua City, it was obvious that winter was coming. At the banquet, everyone was smiling. Kong Han was smiling, and so was Yang Yi. No one dared to make Yang Yi drink and hence targeted Kong Han. Yang Huaishi and the rest also took the initiative to strike up a conversation with Charlie. During this period of time, they had all seen Yang Yi and Kong Han interacting with Charlie a lot. Although it was because of the cat, Charlie also spoke up for Tao Qi, Xueding, and the rest. Not only did Tao Qi and Xueding come over to toast with Charlie, Wei Wen and Shi Xiaotian also came over. During this period of time, Charlie was no longer as agitated as before. However, he couldn't help but feel excited again at the thought that they were all celebrities who would soon become famous. After the banquet ended, when they went downstairs, Ronald saw the cat standing by the stairs with its tail wagging. His face instantly grimaced. He pushed away his assistant's help and walked over. "Ah, Ronald!" Ronald's assistant exclaimed in shock. "What's the matter?" The others heard the commotion and walked over. When Yang Yi and Kong Han came out, they saw the scene of Ronald rolling down the stairs. He drank too much, didn't he? Should be. I saw Ronald trying to step on the cat's tail just now. I don't know why, but he rolled down by himself. He probably drank too much and missed. The person who spoke pursed his lips. He's courting death again. Everyone thought at the same time.